Hey everyone, welcome to a new episode of the Florida Sound Archive podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Kaiser, and this is the first new episode of 2025. And not only is this the first episode of 2025, but this year marks the 5-year anniversary of the podcast. So I just want to take a quick moment to thank everyone for your support. It's really appreciated. All of the guests that have come on the podcast, thank you so much. We're going to have another great year, and we're starting that episode now with Jeremy Staska, Studio 13. Who hasn't Jeremy recorded? That's the question. Jeremy, welcome in. How are you?
I am fantastic. And you?
I'm doing very well. It's so fantastic to have you on the podcast to share your story, because if you go out there and try to find a lot of information about Jeremy Staska, there's really not a lot out there outside of the bands that you have recorded over the years.
Yes. What's funny is there was actually a Wikipedia page about me, but they took it down because they changed their rules about things that had to be confirmed. And because someone had set it up, and Jeremy produced this, and this. I guess there was nothing that Wikipedia could do to verify it, and they took it down. So I tried to put it back up, and then that's when I actually got the notice that this information cannot be verified, so we cannot put it on. I'm like, no one's going to look on the back of a record. Well, whatever. But the people who know that I've helped them out, they know that I've helped them out, and that's more important. That's more important.
Absolutely. And I was just looking through some of my own personal collection, and it's just amazing to see how many credits list your name and the studio. So you just forget sometimes just how many times your name does appear on the liner notes of bands that not only were out of South Florida, but bands that were from other parts of the US as well. And I think you even recorded some folks that were outside the US, right?
That would have to be you'd have to let me know what band that was so I could confirm that. But I was very lucky to not only do a bunch of local bands, but Eulogy Records, which was a local label, started signing bands from other states. And I literally had a band come all the way down from Ohio. I had a band come down from New York. And, there's studios in between here and there for sure. But John Wiley from Eulogy Records would say, hey, I'll pay this much of your recording if you record it with Jeremy, because I know that it'll come out the way that I'm looking for. And so, yeah, I made some people happy from out of state as well. And the people that I know from other countries, I'm not sure if the band was from another country, so you'd have to fill me in on which one you think that might be. I've done a ton of stuff, lots of kinds of music, starting off with being a live sound man for a club called Weekends in Boca, and people back in the day will remember this as being a fun place to go on Friday nights to see. Oh, they let underage girls in and let them drink, that type of thing. It wasn't destined to last, let's put it that way. But Friday nights were a big hit with having rock bands. I was the designated sound man because my manager of our band, which was called Stentorian at that time, he got the gig to book bands. And of course, we played there with Tough Luck and Crier, which were two of the biggest bands at the time, packed the house. The owner of the club loved it, and he decided that we should do that like every Friday night. So we couldn't afford to hire the same sound guy every time because he was really expensive. So my manager said, well, why don't you just run sound? And I'm like, well, my dad was an audiophile, and I do have, a multi-track recorder, and I do own the mixing board in the warehouse where we plug microphones into, but that's it. That's my experience. So I went to a music store and asked to rent a PA system for a band. And they said, do you want a tri-amp or a bi-amp system? And just looked at him like, what are you talking about? And this was like late, like maybe 89, 90, around that time. So I was just starting to get into learning about a biamp system is when you split the signal between highs and lows and use a different amplifier for each one. I was like, wow, what a great idea. And they're like, well, would you like a triamp system? That's even a better idea. You know, I was actually blown away by the technology that I had no idea about. So in running sound, I realized quickly that I needed to get my own gear because renting it was too expensive, and had a lot of fun with a lot of local rock bands, made lots of friends. And then it seemed like the band started getting heavier and there were more and more metal bands coming through, which was kind of fun. And you recently had Mike Pucciarelli from Raped Ape. He was one of the Raped Ape was one of the heavier bands that came through on a Friday night. The first Sinful Lust show ever was with Ambugalard and Raped Ape. And it was bands like Ambugalard and Raped Ape that kind of gave Russ, the singer for Sinful Lust, he was my sound man helper, the idea to do something heavy like that. And we really liked the way that Raped Ape had three people come to the front and do, and that's that, you know, JP, Pooch, and the lead singer. And so we'll talk about JP Soares more in a little bit because he's my most successful artist now. But Pooch is doing great with his artwork. But the Friday night thing at weekends evolved into Saturday nights with alternative bands, which was kind of a new thing in the early 90s. But it was new in Boca, but it wasn't new like in South Beach where they had been doing it all this time. So one of the first bands that came through was Marilyn Manson and the Spooky Kids. And I remember counting, there was exactly 7 people there, all with lunch boxes, to see them play. And they were a little bit out of their territory because they were from down south. So coming up to Boca was a little bit new for them. But I thought they were really nice people. They had a drum machine that kept going wonky, so they would kick it. I thought that was interesting. Brian was throwing raw chicken wings out on the floor, and the only thought in my head is, I'm not cleaning that up. But they did. As soon as they were done, they cleaned up all the mess. So I thought they were, you know, a really cool, nice band. They thanked me, not, you know, and that was it. A few months later, my band Sinful Lust had a few songs. We set up a show with Raped Ape and Ambugalard, and we set the record at weekends for 800 people. One of the reasons is because we canvassed the Slayer concert, and we gave away like 300 cassette tapes, and it was kind of weird hearing people driving away playing your music and like from all different directions, and then you saw half your tape smashed on the ground. But anyway, the very next day on a Saturday night, I'm pulling up to run sound, and there's no place to park. And I'm thinking, well, hell, we set the record last night. We could park. Turns out Marilyn Manson was playing again. But this time, they broke the record, and we had 900 people crammed into weekends. And so they had their own sound man, Roger from Squeeze. I got to take a break and have a drink, I loved it when people brought their own sound when bands brought their own sound engineer. And while I was trying to get drunk, their manager from Marilyn Manson and the Spooky Kids literally asked me to be their sound man. And I'm looking like, I think you guys already have one. He's over there. He's like, no, he's fired after tonight. I'm like, whoa. That's hardcore. I'm in. This sounds like fun. And that's how I became Marilyn Manson's live sound engineer. So I used my system for them. It's different clubs, and sometimes I would run sound for them when they played like Plus 5. That was a common one. And when they played down in Miami, when we went on tour to Tampa, Orlando, and Atlanta. We did little things like that. So that was fun. And on Saturday, but besides Marilyn Manson, Saturday nights all of a sudden became popular, and a plethora of punk bands started coming through. And I was new to punk, but I loved how much fun they were having when they were on stage. It was a little bit different than the metal bands that were just so serious and like so, specific in what they needed in their monitors, and everything was just so specific. Where the punk band would show up and like, wow, we get floor monitors? Cool. Wow, you actually have subwoofers for your PA system? Cool. You know what I mean? It was like totally different attitude, and they were having more fun. And so that's kind of like where Sinful Lust, again, is a more thrash type band, having fun with it, silly name, listening to Anthrax, but also being fans of Slayer. And so that's how I kind of got into the whole alternative thing. And most of my gigs ended up being bands that I ran sound for would make a cassette off the board, give them the cassette, and then they'd ask me to run sound for them again at another club. And so I had a whole bunch of bands that not only was I working Friday, Saturday night at weekends, there was Thursday at the Purple Grotto, there was Tuesday at I can't even remember what it was. A Squeeze was Tuesdays, and so the Purple Grotto was the one that they were trying to compete, and that was out in University Drive. But anyway, that's when I got to meet Collapsing Lungs, and then all these other bands. Radio Baghdad came in, which, by the way, is my favorite punk band ever. And I branched out. I didn't just record rock. I didn't just record heavy metal. The punk bands were hearing the metal cassette tapes and thinking, we need to get into this guy. I recorded Radio Baghdad, and everyone was like, yeah, if you're a punk band, you need to go talk to this guy. But there was also this other guy, Rat Bastard, down in Miami, who did a lot of punk bands down that way, like Load and stuff like that. And so I was lucky enough to do one of the last Load recordings. And when they, I don't know why they came up to see me, but they did, and I was very lucky that I was like one of the people, one of the people that got to see that band in their final stages, before Bobby passed away and all that stuff, and it's I can get emotional now because as we get older, everyone we know is dying. But I'm so happy to be alive and have made it through that whole scene where I didn't think I would last past 50, and now I'm 58. I hate to say. But that scene was a good time, and it kind of morphed into recording as the shows started dying down because DJs and techno music were taking over the rock nights. There were less and less bands. I was finding myself doing sound systems for raves where I'd set up at like 10 at night, go to sleep in my U-Haul, wake up at 5 in the morning and break everything down and get the hell out of there. And I'm thinking, this isn't kind of what I signed up for when I was doing sound. I wanted to do sound for bands, but this sure pays a hell of a lot more. So I kind of like switched the focus to recording and had a whole nother scene come to me, this underground hardcore scene. Music that I didn't know anything about, music that was not coming up to weekends. You're not hearing it in the alternative clubs because it's too heavy. And but besides all the bands in the alternative, the Itch, the Funk, just so many bands, Collapsing Lungs, so many bands from that era that I ran sound for, they ended up coming into my studio, as, the scene was dying down and as the scene was big. One of the coolest moments was running sound for Collapsing Lungs, who opened up for Rage Against the Machine, who was opening up for House of Pain when Rage Against the Machine was brand new. And I thought that was like super cool. Problem was, after I got done with Collapsing Lungs, I couldn't stay for Rage. I got to see one song and I had to go way out to the +5 to run sound for Ambugalard because they had a show that night. Then there's the connection between Ambugalard and Marilyn Manson. As I was recording Ambugalard's epic album, A New Hope, we spent a lot of time on it. They wanted to do it like the Black Album. Let's just come in and work on it, a few hours every day until we get things right. So we spent, months on it. During those months, I was touring with Marilyn Manson, and it was obvious that their bass player was starting to get more and more addicted to, whatever drugs he could get. And there was one particular show where we were out of town where Brian just couldn't take it anymore. Brad was just standing there not playing anything. And Brian went over and pushed him like, dude, wake up. And you just looked at, Brad just looked at him like, what'd you do that for? Pushed him again. It's like, dude, play your parts. Brad was lost. He was just so lost he couldn't even play anything. That night, as we were like sleeping in the garage of one of their fans, that's how we made it, through from town to town. That Marilyn Manson didn't have a lot of money. They were starting to get paid better at this time, but still all the expenses were going into gas and renting a trailer and all that stuff. But while we were slumbering that night, I remember Brian, hey, Jeremy, Jordy's a pretty good bass player, isn't he? And I knew that Jordy from Ambougalard, the bass player from Ambougalard, was a big Marilyn Manson fan. And I knew in that moment, Jordy's not going to be in Ambougalard much longer. He's going to be in Marilyn Manson. And Brian kind of waited till they got signed before he actually made the actual change. That was a hard secret to hold in because the guys from Ambougalard were all good friends of mine, and I knew that the main guy from Ambougalard, Dan, was going to be really hurt by it. And it's like, sometimes when the music business can be cool as shit, and then sometimes you just wish you didn't know things. You really just wish you didn't know things.
What was it like? What was it like for you going out on the tour? You mentioned several different cities that you were able to join the band on. What were some of the differences between some of the shows you saw them play in South Florida versus some of the other parts of the state, and even going as far north as Atlanta?
You'd be surprised. There was a damn good crowd in Atlanta. Like, they had heard about them. Their demo tapes that I had nothing to do with. Brian was in charge of their demo tapes. There's a little confusion there. Some people think I recorded Marilyn Manson. What I did record for Marilyn Manson was a B-side to the single Get Your Gun that came out on Nothing Records under Interscope. And I got to take a side break and tell a story about this because Brian wanted to produce the album. Brian invited me to be the engineer on the album. When they got signed to Interscope, Interscope basically said, no, kid, that's not how it works. We tell you who's going to produce it and when and where you're going to record. So they went along with it. That's when they fired the bass player, fired the drummer, recorded the record, submitted it to Interscope, and Interscope said, you know what? I don't think this is really right for our label. We're going to go ahead and give you the recording for free, and we're going to tear up your contract and no obligation. You're good to go. So Brian, knowing Trent Reznor, just got his own label called Nothing Records with Interscope's money. Just went to Trent Reznor because they were friends and said, Trent, can you do anything for us? Oh, you're instantly signed. Here, let me have the tapes. Let's just remix it. Let's put it out. All right, so the first single, what's the first single going to be? A new song, Get Your Gun. And Brian's like, I got this idea. Jeremy, we're coming into your studio. We're going to record the B-side to Get Your Gun. I'm like, all right, what are we doing? He's like, we're going to make a bunch of noise, and then we're going to flip the tape over and make more noise. I'm like, that sounds like so much fun. Come on in. So we had the girls from Jack Off Jill. Russ from Sinful Lust was there, and we were literally singing like nursery rhymes and church songs. And then we flipped the tape over and played it backwards, and it was a bunch of noise. Literally, it was called Revelation number 9. Revelation number 9 instead of the Beatles Revolution number 9. All right, and it's a bunch of noise. That's the only thing I ever recorded for Marilyn Manson, but it's actually on Nothing Records, and it's like way more important than recording their demos, which people think that I recorded their demos. Like, no. Brian did all that, and beautiful. Brian, when I met him, I knew he wanted to be a rock star and was going to be a rock star. That was so like that's kind of like my story with working with Marilyn Manson. I met them. They were always so nice to me. I know that like there's some stories about shit going down between band members, and I was long gone after all that. But everyone was all good. Everyone was super friendly when they got signed to Interscope. And then I didn't get pushed out of the way. Interscope decided that, well, we're going to have a professional sound man come in and be the sound engineer. I'm like, I get paid. I'm not a professional. It didn't mean. Now they wanted someone with like arena experience and stuff like that. So I 100% understood. But I thought that was so cool that Brian, after the whole ordeal, called me back and said, "Bro, I want to do what I wanted to do. I want to produce something, and I want you to be the engineer. And this is our biggest fuck you to Interscope because they're paying for it."
Exactly. Well, That's a really interesting story, and you really going back to some of those early beginnings of the band. And you've already mentioned so many other bands that you've had the chance to work with, and we've kind of hinted at some others as you get more into the harder style
Yeah.
of music and what have you. You did mention though, Jeremy, that you weren't really always into like the punk and harder stuff. So what did you grow up listening to when you were younger?
I'm going to be honest. I went through an era where I think when um, uh, 10, 11, and 12 years old, each one of those, either birthday or Christmases over 3 years, my dad had gifted me a low end audiophile system, starting with a Pioneer receiver, then a acoustic research um, turntable. The average 11-year-old doesn't have an acoustic research turntable. All right. I was lucky I did. And then when I was 12, the Akai tape deck that right under a Nakamichi. It's like it's one step under a Nakamichi. It's hard to get any better than that. So I became the kid on the block that would record people's records to tape because I had the good tape recorder. You know what I mean? And during that era, I went from a radio alarm clock that was AM only, that got 560 AM. That was a country station. So I grew up listening to Convoy and all that stuff. You know what I mean? Burt Reynolds and the Smokey and the Bandit. That was 10, 11 years old. I was very influenced by that. So I grew up listening at first for a year to country. Then when I get the stereo system, I discovered FM and the rock stations. And so there was 103 She, K102, and Zeta 94. And between that, then it's just like, oh, everything. And then I discovered my dad's record collection, which he was really into the Allman Brothers, Jethro Tull, Eric Clapton, and he even had some Willie Nelson in there. But the stuff that I would put the headphones on, and when I got the turntable, the records I would borrow from him most were Pink Floyd. And the Dark Side of the Moon, Animals, Wish You Were Here just moved me so much. And then I heard Rush on the radio. And then Rush, as I'm beginning to play the drums, I'm listening to the radio playing the drums along with anything that came on. Boston was really fun to play. I love Boston. Kansas was great. That was fun to play along to. Styx, Pieces of Eight, great album. Then all of a sudden Rush would come on the radio and I would just stand there and sit there and listen because I couldn't play it. And I'm thinking, wow, I like this. So gradually I got into the prog rock, which if you're into prog rock, you got to like Yes, you have to like Emerson, Lake and Palmer, you got to like all of that stuff. So I was into Rush. And then one night, listening to K102, there was this syndicated show called The Metal Shop, and they happened to play the brand new release from Iron Maiden called Number of the Beast. I heard that song and was reborn. I literally was the type of kid where my dad was a bishop. I went to church every Sunday, and late on a Saturday night, I was up late, which I wasn't supposed to be, listening to rock music on my headphones. My dad didn't care that I listened. My dad had Black Sabbath. He had rock and roll records, but he was a bishop. He had to, do the right thing. He did not like Iron Maiden. He did not like the fact that I wanted to buy an album called Number of the Beast. It's like, son, I'm a bishop. Do you understand what that looks like? And when MTV first came out, they would do concerts, and I would look up the schedule, and I saw Allman Brothers and Iron Maiden in a 1 hour. And I'm like, that's just not possible. That's not possible. I'm like, Dad, you have cable at your office, right? Can you take the VCR to your office and record for 1 hour on Saturday night between 10 and 11? The Allman Brothers. He's like, oh, great. So he recorded the concert. He watched it at work, gave us the tape, and said there's this horrible band on afterwards called, I don't even know what they're called, but that was the Iron Maiden concert that my brother and I so desperately desired. And it was Paul Di'Anno with the old Iron Maiden before Number of the Beast. Loved it, just loved it. And so I became a metalhead, like between loving Rush and all that classic rock and stuff. The metal started doing it for me. I loved Queensryche. I liked the heavier stuff that was a little bit more fun to play. But then I got into a poser band after college. In college, the one tape I took with me was Iron Maiden, Power Slave. I lived by that tape. I listened to it every day, learned all the guitar parts, and learned the bass parts on my acoustic guitar while I was in college for one semester. Saw the concert, trying to find someone at BYU in Utah to take you to an Iron Maiden concert. That's a task. But I found the one kid on campus that had that I saw with a concert T-shirt. I'm like, dude, you wouldn't happen to like want to go to the Iron Maiden concert, would you? You don't know me. I don't know you. He's like, well, I don't know. I'm like, do you have a car? Yeah. If I buy you a ticket to Iron Maiden, would you, drive us down to Salt Lake City? Sure, why not? So I don't even remember the guy's name. I really don't. But I bought 2 tickets. We saw Iron Maiden. I don't know if he was impressed or not, but I was blown away. Called my little brother immediately and said, buy tickets for Iron Maiden. They're coming to South Florida January 15th. Power Slave. It's the greatest concert ever. And buy me a ticket. And he's like, dude, you're going to be back in college. I'm like, don't tell mom and dad I'm not coming back. This concert is too important to see. One semester at BYU was enough. I had learned a semester of music theory. I didn't go to any of the church classes, and I had to get. I kind of had to get out of there. And it was the greatest decision of my life to get to see the Power Slave tour twice.
Where did they play? Where was that concert when you saw
the Hollywood Sportatorium? And a buddy of mine is actually thinking of maybe doing a documentary on all the concerts that used to be there. It's just hard to find footage. It would be a short documentary, but it's so many concerts I saw there, can't even explain. That was the place to see concerts. Yngwie Malmsteen opening up for. I think they opened up for Iron Maiden, Quiet Riot, Poison, Cinderella. I saw all the hair metal bands because the band that I was in, Stentorian, we were covering all that stuff. Besides Iron Maiden and Queensryche, it seemed that our guitar player was really, really, really into Poison and Cinderella. And it kind of like, it was eventually not gonna last. And so when our band broke up, it just so happened that Russ from Sinful Lust had just joined our band as our new bass player. And he's like, yeah, now that this band is breaking up, you want to do something different? He's like, yeah. He's like, well, I got a bunch of alternative type stuff. So we were jamming some alternative type stuff. And then one day we saw Shakma, which is a movie, like a B movie, C movie at the best. We went to Tuesday Night Dollar Night, and we would specifically look for horrible horrible horror films, so we can just go get high, go watch it, make fun of it. Before Mystery Science Theater 3000 ever came out, we were doing the same thing. So we went to see this movie Shakma, and the advertisement said, Shakma, the world's most aggressive primate, just got mad. Russ literally wrote the lyrics to the song before we even saw the movie, and then just made some minor adjustments in lyrics. But the song, as we were writing it in my buddy's living room, came out to be a thrash song. And like, well, what should we call this? It's like, well, we were doing this silly little thing called Sinful Lust. I'm like, there we go. So our very first song came from, as a joke, making a joke song about a horrible horror movie. We made a tape. We made a recording on it, put it on cassette tape. Actually, I put it on hi-fi VHS, took it to Weekends, the club where I worked at, and had the DJ play it. And people were coming up to the DJ booth going, dude, who is this? This is killer. We're going like, it's the new Slayer. Really? No, it's not really the new Slayer. It's our new band. You guys should really do something. So that's how Sinful Lust was kind of formed. We did something for fun, and we got the encouragement to keep on doing it. So that is the story about Sinful Lust. Weekends, me learning about punk music, and seeing how much fun they had, as opposed to how stressful the metal bands could be working with. So my influences were metal, and it got to a point where Rush wasn't putting out any good records. Iron Maiden wasn't putting out any good records. There was this new band called Metallica that I had seen live that I'd kind of liked the kick drum sound, but I thought the drums were just kind of like a little bit too basic for me to want to learn it. You know what I mean? The double bass stuff was like, yeah, whatever. Didn't really get into Metallica, but I appreciated them. Guns N' Roses came out. Didn't really like Guns N' Roses. Jane's Addiction came out. Didn't really like that. And then once again, on the night that we're going to hang out at my friend's house before we go see the movies, they had been playing the latest Slayer, which was Rain and Blood, and I'm like, man, this reminds me of Iron Maiden, but like way more evil. And they're like, oh, if you like this, you'll like South of Heaven. So then I listened to South of Heaven. I'm like, oh my God. I felt like the first time I heard Number of the Beast, when I heard South of Heaven, I was literally reborn. All right. And so one of the concepts for our advertisement for Sinful Lust was we were going to give tapes away at a Slayer concert. So we saw Slayer and Exodus open up at the Cameo Theater 2 nights in a row. Once again, talking about being born again, seeing Slayer live, I was just the energy. It was 40 degrees outside, 120 degrees inside. That's how the body heat from people moshing, and it literally just I wasn't scared. I was being drawn towards it. I weigh like 150 pounds, and I'm 6 foot tall. I'm no person for the mosh pit, but I was just drawn to it. And then so by the time Sinful Lust had 3 songs, we had a whole set. We had decided Raped Ape and Ambugilard, just like when Stentorian picked Tough Luck and Crier, the 2 most popular bands that we want to be like. We picked Ambugilard and Raped Ape, set the record, only to have Marilyn Manson beat our record the next day. I become their sound man, and and the music scene was just so hopping back then. But Marilyn Manson
was that the first time you were at the Cameo though, when you saw the Slayer Exodus show, or had you been there prior?
No, a couple years before, or the year before, they had done South of Heaven there, and my brother and his friend asked me to take them there, and I said, nah, I don't really want to go to that. And they found a ride, and I kicked myself after seeing it. But that had been the first time I had been into the Cameo. Not the first time I'd been on South Beach, but the first time I'd actually been inside the Cameo, and didn't realize that it was like an old theater that they gutted and made into a bar. So cool. The entire floor was a mosh pit. It was unbelievable.
I can only imagine just hearing stories about what it was like back in that time. Did you ever go back in that early period to research who were some of the bands that may have even come before, like in the late 70s, early 80s? Did that ever happen with you?
How I became knowledgeable about that stuff is bands that I would record would always bring some. I would always ask me, hey, bring me a reference. What are you listening to? I don't even care if it's the same kind of music. I listen to metal, but I also listen to R&B. I like jazz fusion. So I was telling people, bring me reference, and that's how I started hearing. Here's a great example. When Windows 95 came out, they put that Weezer Buddy Holly video on there, and I thought it was gimmicky and kind of cheesy. A punk band came into the studio, and they brought the entire Blue album. I put that CD on and was just blown away. I didn't know how good Weezer was. I had just kind of dismissed it as being a gimmick for being a part of Windows 95 and using, technology to make it look like you're in the 50s. Yeah, big deal. I'm the hugest Weezer fan now, you know what I mean? And so that I would have never have known. Corrosion of Conformity. After Raped Ape, J.C. Dwyer, the drummer, was in a band called Gone Mad, and he brought in Corrosion of Conformity, the Deliverance album. Had never heard it before. Had heard the song Albatross, but had never heard the whole album. Just blown away. Heavier bands start coming in, and they're playing old 80s thrash that I had never heard before. Yeah, I'm going to be honest with you, that the technology to make that style of music didn't make me happy until South of Heaven. South of Heaven to me is a great sounding recording. The Slayer albums before that I don't think sound that good. The kick drum isn't audible enough to be the downbeat, so you lose time. It's hard to follow, the timing. I thought it was a mess. As a Slayer fan now, I go back, I worship those records. I do. But at the time, I was not influenced by those lower quality thrash recordings. My roommate listened to Voivod and DRI, wasn't into it. It didn't sound like Rush. It didn't sound like Iron Maiden. It didn't sound like the pristine musicianship that I was used to working for. Now, are you kidding me? Voivod. How influential they're. DRI, they're like the quintessential original hardcore band. So like when you say hardcore nowadays, it's got nothing to do with what the hardcore was in the 90s. So it was a totally different thing. And it's really cool, and especially Radio Baghdad, one of my favorite punk bands. I've recorded them the most. They are always bringing in all the stuff that they were influenced. Rancid, Green Day, just all this stuff that like I wasn't, being exposed to because I didn't know how to be exposed to it. And I was just like, it was just like my mind. I felt like my brain was swelling. Where I'm like, it's like, what? Out of all these different kinds of musics, I'm hearing. There's not all that's good, but some of it is just so unbelievable that I can't believe I missed out on it. So there was an era where I was, running sound for local bands, listening to the same CDs over and over and over again, when CD players were new in vehicles, just listening to the same stuff over and over again, waiting for something new, not knowing that there was really, besides Iron Maiden, there was this whole other, heavier scene coming from over there. I didn't know anything about it. Recording Hell Witch, I know all about that stuff now because that's what they're all about, that old 80s thrash style that was totally underground, and they bring it to another level. And Hell Witch, if I can go off on another tangent, a band I recorded in 2008, I believe. They're one of the bands that gets played on Liquid Metal. Blows me away when I hear that recording. I'm like, at the first time I heard it, I was like, wow, that Hell Witch recording sounds super clean. It sounds pretty good. I might have if I recorded it, I would have dirtied it up. Turned out I did record it. And I just didn't recognize the name of the song. And but I was like, I was actually reviewing my own mix and being like, yeah, it's okay. I do it a little bit different now. The latest Hell Witch came out on Listenable Records, and I don't know if that name means anything to you, but to me, one of my favorite bands recently that I've gotten into and then gone backwards to all their stuff is Gojira. Gojira, most of their best stuff is on Listenable Records. So when Pat Witch told me that, hey, can you do a record? We kind of got a limited budget, but we got signed to this French label. I'm like, French label? Because I knew Gojira was from France, and I knew Listenable Records. He's like, yeah, I used to be pen pals with this guy from Listenable Records. I'm like, get the hell out of here. He's like, yeah, he buys bootleg videos from me, and he's a Hell Witch fan. Get out of here. The guy from Listenable Records who signed Gojira and got Gojira, to where they are now. Now they're, off on a different label. I'm like, hell, would you sign to that label? How fucking cool is that? So, that was a more recent thing that happened in the last year or so. I kind of jumped in time, but it's just, one thing reminds me of another thing, and so I kind of got off course. So.
That's totally fine. But that's not the only band too that was on Liquid Metal, right? Wasn't Poison the Well also on Liquid Metal?
Okay, Poison the Well is still on Liquid Metal on a semi-regular basis. There's a song they covered by the Smashing Pumpkins called Today, and it gets played on this show called Corridor Covers. It's literally once every few months it's on there. A band called Shai Hulud, also from the same era, they're friends. They do a cover of Linoleum from was it No Effects?
No Effects.
Yeah, Linoleum from No Effects with I think it's Little Chad screaming, singing, and Little Chad is the guy from Newfound Glory. Whole other story. So, but besides the Corridor Covers, which plays Malevolent Creation, Hell Witch, Shai Hulud, and Poison the Well, in the regular rotation, mixed in with Metallica and all the other stuff, you'll find three other Poison the Well songs: Nerdy, Slice Paper Wrist, and Botchla, which is from Botchla is from Tear from the Red. That's my favorite record. And Botchla, they have a video for. And the one time it was on MTV, I was lucky enough to come home from the studio working right before midnight, sat down, turned on MTV Headbangers Ball. Hey, good evening. We're going to start tonight with a band from Florida. They're called Poison the Well. My jaw dropped. I had no idea, A, they were making a video, B, that it was going to be of, I'm like, that's my recording coming through the TV from MTV. What the hell is going on? Okay, I literally, kind of almost lost it there. But I got another story with Poison the Well where I really lost it. Okay, so besides so Nerdy and Slice Paper Wrist, I think are from Opposite of December, which was they're doing their 25th anniversary tour. Glassjaw is opening up. Glassjaw was one of their influences. Better Lovers is opening up, which has a member of Dillinger Escape Plan. Dillinger Escape Plan is one of Poison the Well's influences. So to have their influences actually opening for them on their 25th anniversary of Opposite December is pretty epic. They're coming down to Orlando. I'm going to have to go. Just like I'm going to have to go. I have absolutely no choice. I'm going to have to go. All right. So back to the story, one of the most moving stories, and I hope I don't burst into tears here. Oh, I'm going to drink water. All right. So after we recorded Tear from the Red, they got signed to Velvet Hammer. Velvet Hammer is a label and a management company. They happen to manage the Deftones, one of many superstar bands. They are managers of the Deftones, but they were also a label, and they were signing Poison the Well. So Tear from the Red, the video that's on MTV, Botchla, that was all, from, I think, Atlantic Records backing through Velvet Hammer. Okay. So they end up getting a budget to do their next record. And, knowing that I've got a small project studio, their next record, they already had a studio in Sweden picked out. They're like, dude, we want you to go with us. I'm like, I can't go to Sweden for 2 months. It's just like not physically possible. But it was done by the producers that did Refused. Okay, so Refused is a very well-respected punk band, and when their album came out, The Shape of Punk to Come, unbelievable production. So that's where Poison the Well wanted to go to do their first big record. Okay, but they said, hey man, we're going to cut you in on this because we want to record the record first, do pre-production at your studio. Like, man, that's a great idea. Thank you so much. Work for me. I get to hang out with my buddies. While we were doing the pre-production, I believe it was Derek Miller, got a phone call from someone from Velvet Hammer who was actually hanging out in the studio with Terry Date and the Deftones. And they were blasting Tear from the Red. The guy from Velvet Hammer had to leave the studio because it was too loud. He's like, dude, they are fucking digging your shit. So the band's freaking out going, the Deftones are listening to our music. I'm freaking out going, Terry Date is listening to my mix. What the hell? And so that's like one of the most, you see it kind of brings me to tears every time. That was such a cool moment that if I died today, that's cool. I had that. That was like one of the coolest things I think ever happened in the studio with a recording that we didn't really care too much about. We were just kind of having fun, going through the motions, making sure this part works with that part. They were going to send the demos off to their producers in Sweden. You know what I mean? That phone call just made that whole thing just unbelievable. And I'm still high off of it from today. Right. And that was 2000 something, you know what I mean? Almost, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Cool stuff with Poison the Well. Every time they come on the radio, whether it's something that I recorded or if it's something off of their, newer stuff, I freak out. I take a picture of it with my phone. But I've noticed they play my recordings way more than their new recordings, and I thought that was interesting. Their most popular stuff is from Opposite of December and Terror from the Red,
What do
which
you
is
think? What do you think it was about just you and your studio, the way that you approached recording? Anything that comes to mind that you can think of perhaps why they would have continued to pursue your talents, and also why your songs may come up more often?
um, you know what? I have a feeling that there may have been a comfort issue, and also sometimes bands write their best stuff in the first two records. Let's just be honest. Sometimes that happens. It could be that the songwriting is just better. It's what their fans we're looking for. But when it came down to it, I always there was a experience I had as a drummer in 12th grade. Our band was going to go record a demo so that we could try to get gigs, and I had this Neil Peart kit. I packed it up in my mom's station wagon, showed up at the little studio called Spectrum, which was a little triangle shaped building on 10th Street in Federal here up in Deerfield, and there was a 4-piece kit that was already mic'd up, and the guy's like, "Yeah, you're going to play that drum kit," and I'm like, we're doing Journey, we're doing music that, like, this kit's not big enough. The singer had to literally calm me down and talk me into doing it. But the thing that stuck in my mind, and I had no plans of ever being a sound man or a recording engineer, but the thing that stuck in my mind, if I ever have a studio, the musicians can bring whatever instruments they want. That is so uncool to make someone play someone else's stuff. Do they not know? I mean, I didn't know from the engineer side. It's just a lot faster when you have a kit that's mic'd up, dialed in. Everything's dialed in. We got it dialed in the way we want it. But that's cookie cutter stuff. And I was doing live sound. There was no cookie cutter. Every band was different. So I approached every band like I want to make you guys sound like you sound live, but in a recording situation. And I think people appreciated that. And they'd be wary of tracking too many guitar tracks, so they want to be able to reproduce it live. Some bands would be like, "Can I do another guitar track? Another one? I'm like, "Listen, you're going from 2 rhythms to 8 harmonies back to 2 rhythms again. We got to compromise somewhere." Yeah, so studio magic. Some people were like down. Let's do things in the studio we can't do live. We don't really care. But some of the hardcore bands were concerned with it just being the way that they played it. So I had it set up to where in a small space, drums, 2 guitars, bass player in the corner, everybody playing live, not the greatest sounding recordings because of all the bleed through, but a vibe. You know what I mean? A vibe. And that
Right.
happened. And so as bands came back and recorded again, they're like, "Well, what can we do to make it sound better this time?" I'm like, "Well, I really need to get all the instruments away from the drum mics. Is it possible that we can, have your drummer play to a click track? Uh-oh. And then you guys play afterwards." So this introduced a whole new production idea that was going to take longer. It was going to be more money for me, but take longer for the bands, but yield a better result. And I would give the bands the decision, like, "Hey, you guys are booking more time. Well, let me tell you what I suggest. You guys did this last time. The next step up would be to this. Please consider it." And so I kind of would take in, a band I'd never done before to keep them comfortable, set up like you do live. I might move your amps around to, put a baffle here and there, and let's just get a live recording. And a lot of times that just worked out. And the Poison the Well recordings were done like that. The Terror from the Red, we recorded live drums and I think 1 guitar player, and then overdubbed, so there's some bleed through, and then we overdubbed the other guitars and bass, and so it's a cleaner recording. I bought a higher quality analog to digital converter so that would make my new Pro Tools system sound better, because Opposite of December is 1-inch 16 track, and this is the amazing thing. Labels were being fooled. Labels were, like, "Hey, did you record this on a 24 track 2-inch?" And bands were saying yes, even though I had a 1-inch 16 track. The resolution is a lot different. You know what I mean? A trained ear can tell. But because I eliminated my patch bay and I had DBX noise reduction, which got me the same amount of what you call, like, basically had no signal to noise ratio that a 24 track machine would have that didn't have noise reduction. I kind of was like, I had a hot rodded project studio, and there was one band, Strong Arm, a Christian band. They felt so bad after the first album that they literally confessed to their label that, no, Jeremy doesn't have a 24 track. Our first album was done 16 track, 1-inch. And they're like, well, can you find a 2-inch, 2-inch machine? They found a small studio down the street from me with a 2-inch tape machine. We did their album there. And so, They're Good with Jesus album came out. It was great. Both Strong Arm CDs did very well, and they got me a lot of work. Strong Arm, the first Christian hardcore band that I ever even heard of and ever recorded. And their recordings came out, both of them, the 16 track and the 24 track, came out so well. And they were signed to a label out in California. So all of a sudden I started realizing, hey, these punk bands, they're all signed to these mini labels. The metal bands aren't signed. It wasn't until I got into Malevolent Creation. That was Century Media Records. The bass player from Malevolent, he split off, and with JP from Raped Ape, they did something called Divine Empire, which had Derek Roddy on drums. I sent one of the pictures I sent you is a Derek Roddy with my kid. He's one of my most favorite drummers on the world. He's one of the fastest drummers in the world and one of the best drum teachers in the world. And when you meet him, he's one of the nicest people in the world. Raises snakes, and he's an awesome drummer. So I had JP and Derek Roddy and one of the guys from Malevolent, and that was Divine Empire. That was good enough to get signed to Century Media Records again. Derek left the band. JP wasn't really into it anymore, and the quality of the music kind of went down because JP was doing his blues thing, which now brings me to what JP Soares is doing. JP Soares, the opposite guitarist from Mike Pucciarelli from Raped Ape, had been into blues for a long time, and was playing with a blues act, and they were tearing it up. He decided to break off on his own and get his own band, and then eventually do his own recording. And he is the artist that's probably on the radio more than anything. And he gets played on radio stations across the world, not just Sirius XM. He's on Little Steven's Underground Garage on Sirius XM. One of JP's records was Little Steven's favorite album of the year one year. So, like, another thing, the last JP Soares record that just came out on Little Village, just the best reviews, and it makes me so happy. They don't usually talk about the quality of the recording too much, but you can tell that I did my job because they like the music so much. And like they always say, crystal clear. They'll always say something good about the recording, but JP has become such a good songwriter. And he does covers so well that he is a world-renowned musician. Played in Europe, played in South America. He's got to go further next. We got to get him on the Crossroads tour. Then he's done. But he's someone I think you should also interview too. I would love to get him in on this.
Was that the first time you really got into the recording of a blues musician, or did you record other blues artists before that?
Funny you mention it, because when I first got the 16-track machine in my studio, it was because I partnered up with someone who was the tour manager for Rick Derringer. Rick Derringer was not in his best moments during these 90s. He was addicted to cocaine. His girlfriend / manager was his cocaine supplier, and the booking agent that was my friend was owed a lot of money. And he had just finished a tour, and Rick Derringer was in Florida, and my buddy had this idea. Hey, Jeremy, can you help me record a demo for Rick Derringer so I can get him a new record deal so he can get it in advance so I can get paid? I'm like, that's a long shot, but sure, I'll work with Rick Derringer. So for 3 nights, I got to record Rick Derringer and his band. His band was the sleepiest band I've ever seen. And when we were mixing, Rick actually said something to me. He's like, my band sucks, don't they? Like, yeah, dude's like, dude, your playing is on. Like, he could be wasted, and he's still good on, but his musicians were just not happening. So nothing ever happened with the demo. My buddy got frustrated. He left me the 16-track machine while he got divorced, and that's kind of how I started the studio. Was through a blues project, Rick Derringer.
Interesting.
Rock and roll hoochie coo. Yes.
Right. And also, people who may not be familiar with Rick Derringer, if you follow pro wrestling of the 1980s, Derringer actually was the one performing Hulk Hogan's theme song.
I didn't
Real
know that.
Real American. That is Rick Derringer.
Okay. Here's
Yeah.
another
Yeah.
little tidbit. You know how Michael Jackson did "Beat It" and Eddie Van Halen did the solo.
Yes.
Weird Al did "Eat It," and Rick Derringer did the solo.
I should know that, so I have that
Inter-
record. I should know that.
Interesting. Just an interesting little piece of trivia that a lot of people don't know.
It is. It is
But
interesting.
yeah, I've got to bump elbows with some famous people. Another project that came in that I had to kind of stop because someone was looking for a donation, and I wasn't in the position to do that. But a friend of mine was good friends with Dan Spitz from Anthrax. And Dan Spitz had recently been kicked out of Anthrax for like the second or third time, living in Boca. Autistic kid, which I'm sensitive to stuff like that because I'm on the spectrum. So my sister's kid, actually needed severe therapy because he was autistic. So very good. He wanted to do something to benefit autism, and he wanted to use my studio to try out some gear. So we let him do that. We let him come in for actually a few days, no charge whatsoever. And then all of a sudden, it seemed like he wanted me to record his record for free. And then he said he would let me mix it. I'm like, oh, you're going to let me mix it for free if I record you for free? I'm like, Dan Spitz, man, Anthrax is like one of my, inspirational bands. I saw him a long time ago. Button South or the Summers on the Beach, whatever, blown away. That's what made thrash fun. But no, I'm sorry, I can't do that. Like I got, I just took over a second studio. I got bills to pay, and I literally had to part ways with Dan Spitz because he was looking for something for free. And yeah, that was kind of sad. And between that, Bobby. Oh my goodness, I forgot his name. All right, let's come back to Bobby, who was in Bobby Gustafson. Exodus, not Megadeth. One of those bands. Living, long gone out of the band, living in Florida, wants to do a side project. He finds some musicians up in West Palm that happen to be in a band called Cyst, which was one of the first bands that ever got reviewed in Metal Blade Records. The review was, the production is amazing, but the band Cyst is a pimple on the ass of metal. Horrible review, right? They were so stoked on that review that they were in Metal Blade and got reviewed. Like, dude, it says good production, and we're a pimple on the ass of metal. Woohoo! I'm like, that's something to be excited about. But those are the guys that knew Bobby Gustafson, and so I did his side project. And little to my knowledge, someone had to tell me this after the fact, but Frank from Obituary actually did something called The Henchman in my studio. And I had forgotten the name of the band, had forgotten the name Frank. Someone told me, yeah, you recorded Frank from Obituary. I'm like, I never recorded anyone from Obituary. It's like, dude, I had the videotape to prove it. So the next time I saw the guy, he brought a videotape in of my studio. I'm like, yeah, that's my, messy, cluttered studio. And yeah, I do remember this band. It's like, well, that's Frank. He was in Obituary, and this is called The Henchman. I'm like, all right, note to self, I recorded Frank from Obituary. While recording Malevolent Creation, Rob Barrett was also in a Cannibal Corpse. Cannibal Corpse. So there's some of the famous bands that recorded over in Tampa. that, Scott Burns and all that. I'm kind of like, the secondary, because I don't have that. I didn't have the 24 track machine, and I was, a lot less expensive. If you couldn't afford to go over to More Sound with Scott Burns, I became the guy known in South Florida. Like, oh, if you want metal, go down there. So I was doing, like I said, Hell Witch, Malevolent Creation, Cult of Azazel, and there was a band where the lead singer, she was German and Turkish, and I can't remember the name of the band. But yeah, I started recording some seriously heavy bands after that, as well as more hardcore bands. Remembering Never, they get played on a semi-regular basis on Liquid Metal. Unfortunately, the singer Pete passed away from cancer last year, and It was really sad. And what's funny is I wasn't on Instagram until like 2 weeks after he passed away. And when I followed them, one of the last things he posted was a picture of he and I in Studio 13. And I can't believe that I wasn't friends with him on Instagram, because he was actually kind of reaching out to me. And that really touches me. And then when I heard that they play that song on Liquid Metal, I was like, Pete lives on, yes. So on Instagram, I chimed in and said, hey, just so you know, you guys don't know this, but in Studio 13, we used to call him Mean Pete. Not because he was mean, he had a heart of gold. He had the meanest voice that I've ever recorded, ever. He would overload my super expensive tube mic preamp, TL Audio mic preamp I bought specifically for recording Poison the Well. When we did the Tear from the Red, I bought a new analog to digital converter and a new super expensive preamp. Usually the Neumann, my expensive mic, you get right up to it and it's perfect with it down. Pete was so loud, he had to stand 2 feet away from the mic, otherwise it would overload. Never seen that before. Never, ever again. Never since. And so I chimed out, so yeah, we have a nickname for him, Mean Pete. A year later, now on Instagram, people still give a shout out to Mean Pete. I'm like, that's so fucking cool. Someone actually read my posts. So yeah, man, sad that I didn't reach out to him before he passed, because he was reaching out to me.
Right.
But anyway, that's other than that, I got to get on Facebook next, because there's probably a bunch of people that are going to die soon that I'm not going to get to see if I don't get on Facebook.
It is sad that, it was really sad to hear you're such a young guy. And
yeah, and so nice and so cool, and just not the type of person to get cancer. No.
Right. Right. And just thinking, because you have been around the scene for so long now, and to your point earlier, as you kind of get older, you kind of look at yourself and you kind of say, wow, I can't believe I made it this far.
I didn't think I'd make it past 50. I didn't.
Yeah, that's what you had mentioned.
Yeah.
So,
I don't even want to go down the list. Maybe not musicians, but people I know from that. But he's the one musician, Barry from The Funk, I think, Heroin, Brad, the bass player from Marilyn Manson, Heroin Issue. Yeah, there have been a few musicians that I really wish they hadn't crossed that line, because I like to smoke weed. I used to like to do acid, and, I would drink until I would puke. But, I always had my limits, and some people, they don't have a lot. Some people don't draw a line for themselves. And I had already done that before I had gotten into any of the partying, because I come from a background where my dad got addicted to cocaine and my parents got divorced. So I note to self, our family has an addiction problem. Okay. I probably should not do cocaine ever. And I never did. Well, okay, I tried it once with a girl, because she was really pretty, and I didn't have fun. I'm going to be honest, I didn't have fun that night. I'll never do it again. Never do it again. And so I set lines for myself. And so, but I wondered, with all the people coming through, with all the new drugs, like when ecstasy first came out, and I was, like I said, doing sound systems for raves, and people asked me, "Are you rolling?" I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Tripping on ecstasy. I'm like, no, actually, I'm going to go sleep in my U-Haul until all tripping fools are done. And so, but then, I tried ecstasy with a pretty girl, and it was fun. You know what I mean? So I was like, I've tried some things, but I always wondered if like, if with all these new things coming out, am I, obviously you can't, continue to do stuff like this and function and have a normal life.
Right.
So I wasn't ever in a position to go off the rails and do a 3-day bender or anything like that. If I did acid and had to sleep in the next day, I felt guilty because I missed, remember the pagers? Yeah, I'd missed a bunch of beeps, a bunch of pager beeps, beeper messages, and so I would, the guilt would just keep me from, crossing anything that was beyond weed, acid, and alcohol. I just kept it to that.
Right.
Mushrooms were fun, but other people were like looking to get higher and higher and higher and higher, and I saw it, I could see it, and it's scary because you can't stop it. You can tell people that what they're doing is going to kill them, and it's like water off the back of a duck. They're not going to listen to you. In fact, if you tell them enough, they'll start to not like you, and you'll never be able to help them. Yeah.
Just on the other end of that spectrum, you also recorded a lot of bands and perhaps members of bands that were part of straight edge.
Yes, I'm so glad you.
Which is contrast. So, what was that like for you? Because growing up with more of the drugs and what have you, that was quite different.
What's happening. It was happening all at the same time. As I was discovering all these punk bands, I discovered that if there was an X before and after the name of the band, that meant that they were straight edge, and there was extreme straight edge, and these were skinheads that would, if you ask them for a cigarette, hey man, you got a light, they would beat you up. All right, so there was that extreme straight edge. Thank goodness I didn't hang around with thugs like that. I hung around with the thugs that were like, we're straight edge. Like, okay, cool, got it. But we hear you smoke weed here. Like, yeah, I do. Well, just let us know so we can walk outside. Okay, you got it. All right, and from that evolved the straight edge bong hit, which was when we're intensely in the studio, especially doing guitar, got the whole band crammed into a 6x8 room, and the guitar player's in there, and it's getting, like we're doing stuff. Do it again. Like, man, I need a bong hit. And they're like, all right, go ahead. Like, you guys aren't going to leave the room? Like, no, we're good. So I started doing, bong hits inside the control room, and we invented the straight edge bong hit. I'm not supposed to tell anybody. No, I'm not going to mention any names.
I was going to say, do you remember what bands were?
I do, and I'm not saying any names. They know who they are, and they'll get a good laugh if they hear this. I remember the straight edge bong hit. So the funny thing is the straight edge bands literally tolerated me smoking weed because they wanted me to record them. I don't know how much more honor you can get from a straight edge band than that. They're like, we're going to allow you to do something that we're just so against, but you're cool. You're still cool with us. I'm like, wow, that's awesome. Even the Christian bands, I told them, like, hey, it's like, I was a Christian, I'm not quite sure anymore, but it's all good. It's all good. It's like anyone, I don't care who you are. You can ask yourself, what would Jesus do? And it might help you out of a certain situation. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, I'm all good. I'm down with JC. Let's do it. And there was one Christian band where I was done with the drums, and we had the guitars done, and we were getting ready into the vocals, and my hard drive crashed, and I lost the entire session, and I had to re-record them. And I'm like, if that's not the fucking devil, like having fun with me, I don't know what is. You know what I mean? I have to. But they were good spirited about it, and I re-recorded everything for free and got them back to where they were. But I'm like, listen, it's not because you guys are Christian and I'm a non-believer. That's not the reason. It's hard drives just go bad sometimes.
Technology, right?
Yeah. So that was one of those things that really made me mad. But I look back and I can actually laugh at that one. That's a laughable one right there.
A lot of people who have been prior guests of the podcast have talked about the vibe in the studio, and some people brought up the fact that there was a lot of weed being smoked and all that, but there was a vibe in the studio. When they say that, do you have a good idea of what that vibe was like, especially in that period of the
Yeah,
90s?
yeah, I'll tell you why. Because my studio was basically a warehouse. I had a drum riser that was carpeted and had some sound panels on the walls, and it had a bunch of crap in there, storage. So it literally looked like your rehearsal place. When people would walk in, it would be a bigger version of the garage or tiny warehouse or whatever. It's just as homey, just as cluttered. Wow. I'm not like intimidated by anything at all. You know what I mean? And I use the same mentality as a live engineer that I would in the studio. Just try to make everyone as comfortable as possible, lay down some ground rules. We actually started writing down rules in the control room. Number one rule of metal is no farting in the control room. And we ended up with a list of 10 of them, like the 10 commandments, but they are the rules of metal. You had asked me previously for flyers. Somewhere I have a box that's got not just Sinful Lust flyers, but flyers of everyone from that era that were thumbtacked to the bathroom wall. I saved them. They're in a box. They're in my new studio, and I'm eventually I'm remodeling my bathroom now. I'm gonna find that box. I'm gonna break them out, and I'll send you a copy of every one. You'll
Sounds
probably
amazing.
get a kick out of it. Collapsing Lungs, Marilyn Manson, just like all the flyers from back in the day, and that would probably jog my memory more than anything. But that box is deep in storage. I can't get to it right now.
At least you still have it, which is good.
Yes. I thought I had someone in mind. There was a band I used to record called the Excretins. They were also called Postface, and I did a Postface recording and 2 Excretins recording. And the guitar player, oh my God, I'm having a brain fart. I can't remember. How can I not remember his name? An artist, definite artist. And I was going to commission him to give me a collage, to make a collage out of all the posters. If he's still alive, I haven't talked to him in years. Rich Ambrose. If you're still alive, I'm gonna contact you. Rick, he goes by actually. But yeah, so that's going to be fun when I get into that. So I'm in a newer facility now. I'm down here in Oakland Park. I have a lot more space than I did in Deerfield. It's a lot cleaner, not nearly as much clutter. I was sharing the space with someone else who had a studio doing hip hop music. So I had basically half of a 1,500 square foot warehouse. My buddy moved out. I'm now responsible for all the rent, but I have all this extra room that now I can record entire bands again with isolation booths and stuff. And I'm actually just getting ready to start a campaign of all my new services that I'm going to, because people think that I'm just doing big projects now. That's all I've been doing is like the bigger, more expensive things, like Dirty Space Groove got signed to Iron Gate, JP Soars signed to Little Village Records, the Hell Witch, what do you call it? They're on Listenable Records. And so, yeah, those are bigger budget things. But my 19-year-old's in a band, and I remember there's all these kids out there that don't have a budget, but they need a place to record. So I used my kids band as a guinea pig to where they all set up at the same time, and we just multi-tracked a recording. Just practice your songs. Do each song 3 times, and then when we were done, we picked the best one, put a mix on it. It's coming out on Spotify soon. It came out good enough, and it was such a low budget thing that I'm thinking, all right, I think I got a new business here. Instead of waiting for the big projects to come in, like right now, I'm sitting here going, I had work for January, but it got postponed to the end. Well, what am I going to do between now and then? I guess look for more work. But I've got so many ideas besides doing live shows, which is something. If you go to my YouTube channel, The Original Studio 13, you will see a bunch of footage of sometimes nothing happening, but I'll set up cameras and broadcast the recording session. It might be 7 or 8 hours long, where you see him setting the drums up, you see me setting the mics up, and then I'll switch to the webcam that I'm on now for inside the control room when they're doing vocals. And you'd be surprised people watch those things. So I got this idea. How about live unplugged type of concert? So I had a blues country guy, John Nemeth, come in recently, just a couple months ago, and he was doing something unplugged. And I was getting, a rough mix for them in the headphones that started to sound pretty decent, of a decent mix. Didn't think of broadcasting, but I did think enough to set my GoPro up on top of the piano, looking down. The piano was moved out of the way because everyone was in the same room. And I got the footage, and then I married the rough mix to the footage and posted it. And I called it Live at Studio 13 because there's no reason why I couldn't have had that mix and the camera going at the same time. So I could have done a live thing. And I got a lot of feedback from local bands like, dude, that sounded killer. You got the sound down. We just, you just need more lighting. I'm like, yeah, John was actually standing in the shadows. You know what I mean? But so now I'm working with this band, Cropsy's Hideout. My buddy Russ from Sinful Lust is producing them. They're an electronic band. We're going to bring back memories of Collapsing Lungs, early Marilyn Manson, and Tony, the DJ for the band, works at the arena, Panthers Arena. So our very first live show broadcast is going to happen on the 26th. We're going to use the 25th and 24th and 25th to set everything up, sound check, and it's going to look kind of like a Saturday Night Live thing, to where there's, we're going to turn my studio into a set. They're going to perform live. It's going to sound killer because we're going to have the mix, dialed in, and we're going to use pro cameras, not webcams. So my buddy got the Blackmagic switcher. He's got a Blackmagic camera. We got next door. My buddy had the guy that moved next door, video. They have a bunch of Canon 4K PTZ cameras that we can hook up. It's going to be a production, and it's going to look totally killer, and bands are going to want to pay to come in and do a concert. And even though no one's making money this time, it's costing everyone this first show. But it's another part of the services that I want to give to people. That so far everyone that's just seeing the little unplugged thing that I did, that's killer. I'm like, well, think about lights and actually rehearsing and actually sound checking and it not being unplugged, being like the real amplifiers and all that stuff. I now have the capability of doing that, and everyone is like, their eyes light up. So I'm thinking, it's like, all right, well, I need some of the better acts to do it first, so that I can, not have to charge anything, but get it set up and make it look good, and then get the smaller acts to have to start paying if you want it to look this good, come on in. Or we'll just do a stripped down version, one camera sitting in my studio, live, go, that type of thing. So I want to accommodate all budgets, and I want to accommodate all ideas, if that makes any sense.
It does. And
yeah.
Do you ever find time to go out and just maybe even check out newer bands, and perhaps if you do stumble upon someone and say to yourself, wow, I would like to record that
I find myself going out when someone invites me. I go on Instagram and look for shows, and I can't always find something going on in my area until the next day I get the flyer for it. I'm like, oh man, I missed out on it. But what I've been doing a lot lately is going to the breweries. A lot of local breweries between Pompano, Fort Lauderdale, and they're doing two things. They're doing metal shows, because my teenage kid plays in two different bands, Blood Tide and Bubba, and they have both done the brewery thing several times. And they're also doing the folk things, where Lester from Radio Baghdad, Mark Dubin from I can't remember what punk band he was in, all these punk guys, they're super witty, super funny. They're just sitting there with an acoustic guitar, singing their own originals, making up stuff as they go along, and funny as all hell. And I want to get a bunch of those people through my studio, even though that's not going to pay me a whole lot, just because it's a genre of music that I want to touch more on. Lester put out an album already that's kind of very folky, a lot of acoustic, and I played drums on it for him. I just think it's a little niche thing that is starting to, I'm seeing more people perform it. So I need to be recording those people. My cousin, Brett Staska up in West Palm. He's an accomplished country artist up there. He's well known. He plays all the clubs up there. He played Sunfest this past time. And it takes a lot to get on Sunfest. I was in a reggae band. We played Sunfest. Oh, that's a whole nother story. Oh my God. That's the era. That's the era after Sinful Lust. I wasn't in a band anymore. I was running sound, and a reggae band who was the most popular, Leku, they got paid. Their drummer, everyone was from the University of Miami, just incredible musicians, except the singer. He was from Dominican Republic, all right? Dressed really sharp, was part of a modeling agency. They had great original songs, and they could just jam. My band, Sinful Lust, had broken up, and then all of a sudden, the drummer for Leku joined Casey and the Sunshine Band, and the keyboard player moved, who was best friends with the drummer, moved to Texas. So I became the drummer for the reggae band and took over the keyboard player's job at Tropical Video. And what he was doing there was he got stuck as the audio guy because he was in a band, and he went to film school at University of Miami. He wanted to do film. They made him the audio guy. He didn't want to be the audio guy. He got a or a video editing job in Texas. He moved, and he trained me on this brand new system called Pro Tools. He's like, I'm going to train you for 2 weeks, and then I'm gone. And then you can call me with a question. People pay $48,000 for 2 years to learn Pro Tools. I learned it in 2 weeks and got paid for it. I'm one of the few people on this planet that got paid to learn Pro Tools because it was necessary to teach someone how to do it. And the first thing I thought of as soon as I saw this 8-track version of Pro Tools is, oh, I need 16 tracks so I can record a band like this. Oh my God, this is the way to go. This is the way to go. So there was this, switch over between analog and digital that I was, striving for, but had to wait until they made a Mac clone. I had one of the only Mac clones ever made, power computing, and I was able to get this new cheap little card that Pro Tools made that gave you 2 tracks in, 2 tracks out, but it was high quality. And I bought that card and brought everything to my job, to my work, set it up on the break room table, and then my boss saw me doing Pro Tools on a computer that wasn't in the control room. He's like, oh, you're not going to be working here much longer, are you? I'm like, no, I still got to get this to 16 tracks. I'm here until I can get 16 tracks going on. But yeah, you're right. As soon as I can record 16 tracks on this, I'm not working here anymore, because I was doing both. I was doing the day job in Miami and just starting up the recording thing.
Ah, okay. What I mean? What was your day job back then?
It was at a place called Tropical Video, and I was the audio for video guy. I was in my own room that my computer that ran Pro Tools was synced up by way of time code to an analog editing room and a digital editing room. So I'm learning not only Pro Tools in 1994, but Softimage, which is the program that did Jurassic Park, the CGI program. And they had a $50,000 Silicon Graphics computer that the main graphics guy was a guitar player. So he was hanging out with me in the audio booth every time he could get a chance. When I wasn't working, I was hanging out in his, learning 3D animation and After Effects and the computer side of editing. And so recently, I'm like, you know what? I've got to put all this video knowledge to use with my audio knowledge. And so I've been making a lot of videos for bands. I've got a couple of lyrics only videos that I've made for people. And I helped my buddy Julian with the Black Magic. We shot a Hell Witch video. We have a video that's out on listenable records. That's so exciting. We have and I did their lyrics only video. One of them's got 21,000 views. The other one's got 24,000 views. They just came out last year. That's it's exciting stuff. That like when you're the first video you make gets 24,000 views. I'm like, all right. Maybe I'll try it. I'll give this a shot. The one thing that's not on my website as far as services goes is my video services. But there's a tab called videos, and it'll show you like 6 different videos, and it's all stuff that I've worked on. So people might get the idea that, yeah, I'm doing videos too, but it's kind of like there's a lot goes into making a music video. You'd be surprised. And it takes a lot of planning. And so instead of like advertising that I'm making videos for people, I'm right now sticking to the bands that I've just recorded recently that I know need videos. And they're kind of keeping me busy with that, but I want to branch out and do more special effects and stuff like that, which is what I'm learning Maya and Houdini, which if you go online and look, how are the Marvel movies made? Well, the main programs they use are After Effects, Maya, and Houdini. And so I would like to incorporate, Hollywood style special effects into local bands' music videos to make them look Hollywood style. I think that would be very helpful. Don't you agree? So that's something I'm actually literally working on right now. I got to get the camera tracking thing is the hardest part. Standing still, gotcha. I'm gonna do a Hell Witch video where I found a torture chamber that looks like a video game, but I'm gonna retexturize it, make it look real, and then have them actually performing inside a song called Torture Chamber inside of a torture chamber. So that's a project I got coming up, for a video that
Right.
But Cropsy's Hideout, they always come to me with hey, we need an animation. Do you know anyone that does animation? I'm like, no. Let me see. Adobe Animate. Well, let me download Adobe Animate. I guess I'll do the animation for you. So I've kind of like taken on some things I never thought I would take on just out of a challenge. Right? Can you make an animation? Like, I'm not sure. I think I can. Yeah. Actually, you know what? I can. I know how to do it now. I learned a new program. I love learning new shit.
It sounds like it. It sounds like yeah.
And one of the things I had sent you to listen to is it's called Sweet Blood Initiation. That's the name of the album. In 2017, this album came out, and you're like, why are you sending me this stuff now? I'm remixing it now, and the sound quality is like something I'm very, very, very proud of. It's what the band should have sounded like in 2017, but I wasn't that good. I'm much better at it now. But the beauty of Sweet Blood is one of their songs. This is a local metal band. We decided we were going to do our best to get one of their songs on the radio, whatever it takes, and we did. We got a song called Dance up to number 26 in the mainstream rock charts on Billboard. They were mostly played in the Midwest. A company that owned like 70 radio stations or something, so they were getting played on that. And but it's through hard work, determination, teamwork, promotion, having a good product, having some, making friends. If you don't know someone on the inside, find out how to make friends with someone on the inside. That's what it takes. And that's what we did. And so we were really happy. After that, nothing really happened with the band because they didn't get signed to a label. Every label said, you guys have done so much yourself, it's like ready to go out, why don't we do a partnership deal? But Chris, the main guy, had already spent too much money. He's like, we're looking for someone else to pick up the tab from now on. We kind of like let that sit. They've got 40,000 views on one of their videos. This is going back to 2017. So recently I said, hey, what the hell? Let me try remixing it, with new technology. And he was so happy with like the outcome that we're deep in the middle of remixing their album. And it's to me, it's one of the best sounding things that I've done. And where JP Soars, the blues thing I also sent you, that was one of the things I was most proud of. And now the Sweet Blood. But I threw in they do a cover of It Ain't Like That by Alice in Chains. And the reason why I threw that in there is because they sound like Alice in Chains.
I did get that vibe from the vocalist, not on every track, but there were a couple that I was scanning through. And for a minute, you could think that sounds like Lane Staley from Alice in Chains.
Yes, and here's how that came to be. The singer Sal, he's in Godsend. Yeah, the poster's up there. He's in a local band where they cover all kinds of music. So when they came in with their originals, this is Sweet Blood. Chris, the guitar player, wrote most of the music and wrote most of the lyrics. Sal was in the vocal booth singing, and we had a few songs done. And I had noticed that, like, man, he's going from like one style to another. Is this Pantera? Is this Metallica? So I kind of stopped everything. And on the first song, Acid Ritual, I looked at their lyrics and I scratched off. I put a line after the first two lines. Like, they had like all these lyrics for the chorus. I put a line right there, and I got on my guitar and I played something bluesy and I sang it to the guitar player. He's like, dude, that's it. It's like, Sal, sing this. He's like, you've had me change this fucking part 1,000 times. I'm not singing shit. I'll see you next time. So like, all right, let's come back on Thursday. And so by Thursday, we had actually worked out what we wanted Sal to sing. And he's like, so you're going to tell me what to sing now? I'm like, yes, we're going to tell you what to sing now. So we had him sing this bluesy style, and it sounded just like Lane Staley. And we're like, well, what is Alice in Chains doing now? Nothing. Let's do it. Everyone's an Alice in Chains fan. Who cares if people say we sound like Alice in Chains? Because it's not all the way Alice in Chains, not at all. The fun thing is, the week that we were number 26 on the Billboard charts, Alice in Chains had just put a new record out, and they weren't in top 40, and so we beat them. We beat them at their own game. It was kind of fun. It was kind of fun. So, and there's a story behind Sweet Blood. The drummer used to play for Yngwie Malmsteen. He was in a band called Seasons Lost. I had recorded Seasons Lost. The bass player for Sweet Blood was in Bury the Broken, a local metal band from West Palm that I really liked a lot, and I used to wear their T-shirt constantly until I wore it out. And he's Dave Rabinowitz, he's a great tattoo artist now. And let me see, besides Pucciarelli being a great tattoo artist, the bass player for Cyst, the band, the Pimple on the Ass of Metal, super successful. A tattoo artist, Dean Corpse Tattoo. He might even work with Pooch sometimes. Weird. Yeah, but anyway, I'm not tattooed. I'm not pierced. So when I do get that tattoo of a 13, because my birthday is October 13th, that's why I call my business Studio 13. Eventually, I'm going to have to get one of my buddies to do it. The funny thing is there's a tattoo studio called Studio 13 in Texarkana, Arkansas. And they've been trying to get my website for a while. They gave up. They gave up because I'm doing something with it now. But I have studio13.com. They wish they had it. But I almost feel like I need to travel to Texarkana, meet these people at Studio 13, and say, hey, I'm studio13.com. Put a 13 on my arm somewhere. You know what I mean? Let's do it. Let's become friends. Let's bond it. You
never know. They may actually wind up knowing.
They might know some people that I
right. You recorded
exactly. It's so funny how things work. And where it seems the older you get, the more random people there are. But there was a time where I would go out and I would always see someone. Those times are kind of few and far between. But every time I go to a concert, I always see someone that I haven't seen in years, and it's kind of amazing. I'm like, oh my God, I'm so glad to see you're still alive. That type of stuff. Yeah. Some people, I can't remember their names, and it doesn't bother them. They're just like glad that I remembered their face. You know what I mean?
Right. And also, so many people over the course of time can relocate somewhere else. Did that ever cross your mind? Did you ever think at any point in your life that you would want to move away from Florida, or that's your home for the rest of your life?
Well, what's funny is there was actually a time I was kind of getting burnt out on recording. And it kind of has to do a little bit with autism and ADHD. Doing the things that you like can actually kind of burn you out, even though that's what you want to do. And so it got to the point, especially after Poison the Well is, one of my, favorite bands that I recorded. I had done as much with them as I could possibly do. I couldn't do any more. They were signed. They were going off to bigger and better things. and I was starting to record JP's records. And I, I was like, I did a hell, which I thought was started. It looked like the projects were starting to get bigger, so I was letting more time go in between so I could relax more, and it started, costing me more money, and it, got to the point where I was like, really having to work instead of having money in the bank. I was, like, oh shit, I need to get some work in next week, that type of thing, and that kind of got old. Got a girlfriend, she got pregnant. Then all of a sudden you start rethinking your life. I'm 30 something. Am I going to be doing metal for the rest of my life? What am I going to be doing? What do I want to show my kids when they grow up? It's so funny that my second kid, my 19-year-old, is in the most brutal death metal band. It's so brutal. It stops the type of stuff that I don't listen to. But it's great. And my other kid, my 23-year-old, is a computer whiz, and one of my biggest hobbies were computers and music. I had a computer in 1978. 79 when I was in middle school. That was the family computer, TRS-80 Model 1. A lot of people think that the Commodore and the Mac and Apples were the first computers. No, those were the first mass-produced computers. The first computers were from Tandy, Radio Shack, and other like little small private companies. But the TRS-80 was like the first home computer that used the 8086 chip. And I've been hooked on computers, computer science and stuff like that. I'm not a computer science. I just recently took a class on matrix multiplication so I can understand how artificial intelligence works. Oh, my mind melted. And, I got an A in calculus. You know what I mean, in high school, but that's
impressive.
There's some math going on that it's just too much for me. It's too much for me. I like music. I can't go down the rabbit hole of math. I'm interested in all that stuff. I really am. I'm interested in more things that I could actually do.
Right. I can understand that.
That's one of my things. So what comes back around is I might sit here one day with nothing to do in the studio going, I could paint. I make my own sound baffles. I sent you a picture of the wood with the crazy angles. I could make a bunch more of those. And sometimes I just don't know what to do because I have so many options. I can't pick one. I have all this music that I need to put out. I only have one song done, the song that I sent you. Right. It's one of probably 20 that are, half of them are originals and half of them are cover ideas. I want to actually cover Slayer, South of Heaven, but jazz style. And people laugh when they hear that. I'm like, no, I got this in my head and it's going to sound fucking killer. It's going to sound fucking cool. And I can't wait to do it. And I wish I had more time to work on my own stuff, but at the end of the day, that's what I sneak in when I'm not, doing stuff like this. I do go out to music stores and try to talk to people and see, hey, who's recording where. I just made friends with someone at MAE who says, hey, Monday night, jazz night, Poorhouse in Fort Lauderdale. I'm thinking, I think I need to start doing that. So when you ask me, do I go out? Not nearly enough. But I'm going to start doing a lot more of that now. Absolutely. Because that's how I used to get all my work. I was a live sound engineer. I went to shows. People would, run me, hey, this is so-and-so, this is so-and-so, always meeting new people. But, sometimes things change when you get a family. You get a kid, all of a sudden, your priorities kind of change. Very and true. You don't go out as often as you do. Right. And I think I kind of fell off the map a little bit there and maintained a handful of people that were going to come back to me no matter what. Right. But the new work just wasn't happening. You know what I mean?
I totally get that. Yeah.
Right. So I was in a position in Deerfield where I had 2 units. It was overkill. It was overkill. And I decided to move down here to trim the fat, save money. And now it just so happens that now I have the full size of this place. So it's kind of like where I was again, but this time I got a plan, for the expansion. I kind of been waiting for my buddy to move out. Cause I need that space. I need more space to get more people in here to get a bigger band. I need your studio for an isolation booth. The green room, it will be the green room when we do live broadcasts. I got a lot of ideas, and sharing the ideas with people helps because My friends would tell me like, nah, dude, that's not going to work. But some of the ideas I've had recently, people are like, oh, dude, that's a great idea. I think we should do it. We should do it. Just got to figure out how to make money out of all of this stuff. You know what I mean? I think you can you can you can empathize with me on that. It's like,
Absolutely.
this stuff
Yeah.
is great. I love it. I love the technology, and if we can just turn this into something that lucrative buy the house. You know what I mean? Instead of pay the rent.
Exactly.
that's
Exactly.
that's what I'm looking at. But that's
Right.
not. I'm still looking to the future to expand what I've been doing. And yeah, keep on. I'm gonna keep on doing. So I had a day job for the past 6 years doing IT, which was a lot of security cameras, a lot of setting up printers, to be honest with you, email stuff, boring stuff. But my kid who was working with me for my younger brother, Jason, who was in Sinful Lust, he was our boss. I got my kid in, and he's like number one employee now for my brother. Computer whiz, really good with all that stuff. And I'm really good with construction type stuff because I used to do drywall. So I would install the racks that need to be go against the wall and stuff. And I got burnt out on that. I literally got burnt out on that because I was getting more and more work in my new studio here, and it had to do with clients from New England doing yacht rock. Believe it or not, local drummer, friends with the drummer from Sweet Blood. Hey, yeah, this is some jazzy stuff. Is that cool? Yeah, man. Whatever. I would do the drum tracks, send them off, and then they would send them back to me with the other instrumentation, and then I would do a mix on it. And we've been doing that for a few years, and those guys got 1 million views, 1 million listens on Spotify as of this last record. So, like, you know what? Why didn't I put my music out 6 years ago when I had all these songs written? So that's kind of like where I'm at now. I'm shifting modes into, besides even more extreme metal than I've ever done before, I'm getting ready to like nosedive into jazz, to where I'm going to start hanging out with jazz musicians. I can't call myself a jazz musician. I'm studying, but the one recording that I
Right.
sent you, that the trumpet player knocked it out of the park. He qualifies as a jazz musician, so I can call it a jazz I can call it a jazz recording. So I'm going to hook up with people like that and do more stuff like that. Audio for video has always been something. Lester. Let's get back to Lester from Radio Baghdad. He's the only person that I know that has made 2 like B movies, and they're both being distributed. The odds are only 1 in 400 movies ever makes it to distribution. Both of his did. And his second movie, Fog of War, I was lucky enough to do most of the soundtrack for. Someone else had started it, and then I came in and redid a bunch of it, so I got my name on top of his. That was kind of fun. But I had so much fun doing audio for video that all the experience at Tropical Video allowed me to do audio for his film with time codes and a complete understanding of what he wants. His editor was blown away that I actually sent him stuff with time code and notes to start to with pre-roll. It's like pre-roll this part before 30 seconds before this scene, and then see what happens. And they're like, oh my god, this guy wrote music that goes into the scene. I was thinking of things that they hadn't thought of as independent filmmakers, and it was a blast. And I'm waiting for something like that to happen again. So,
Did you grow up at all a fan of just scores and soundtracks themselves? Was that something you were also
what's funny is I was one of those kids that grew up listening to the Star Wars soundtrack. Are you kidding me? We used to play that all the time. I was born in '66, but October, so I was 10 when Star Wars came out in '77. Right. That movie influenced me so much. I don't even know how to explain I saw it that summer in the Dollar Theater 7 times, and had the movie memorized, like all the dialogue was memorized. And the score for that is just unbelievable. Since then, I have discovered Henry Mancini. All right, now he's famous for doing the Pink Panther theme. He does a lot more than that. There's this scene in The Big Lebowski where the dude is at the porn producer's house, and there's this weird big band music in the background that I absolutely love. It's Henry Mancini, and so that's another score that I literally listened to. The Big Lebowski, I listened to that score. I used to drive around and listen to that. But the weirdest one that I would crank and in my Mustang, with the volume cranked up, the soundtrack to The Good, the Bad, the Ugly. I would get the weirdest looks. Ah! And people would look at me like, what the hell? Wow, wow. I'm like, what is he listening to? There's some really good music on that soundtrack. Not just that part, some really, really cool guitar. And soundtracks definitely influenced me. And I'm very, very influenced by the way The Simpsons is orchestral. I had one semester of music theory. When I left school, I thought to myself, if I stick with this music theory stuff, I'm going to end up doing classical or jazz. Who wants to do that? I'm a metalhead. Now here I am wanting to score movies into jazz. And I really wish I had taken 7 more semesters of music theory. I'm learning stuff on my own now. There's certain rules to scoring orchestra. Big band, to me now, is like the ultimate. That's the ultimate challenge. And I want to score a big band song. And so the song that I sent you today, in my head, there's a big band version of that. I'm not able to do that now. I don't have the abilities to arrange it, but I have it in my head that that's going to be a big band song eventually. And right now it's just it's a Django Reinhardt type of thing, with a strumming guitar. But I hear horns and strings and stuff like that in there. And so I've learned through working with other bands that went, hey, can you add a horn section here? You got it. I got Contact, which is the software you need. I'll buy the most expensive, best sounding set of plugins, set of sounds, and then I will learn how to make those horns sound like all the articulation. I'm really, really into that. Strings, really hard to make synthesizer strings sound real. Same thing with horns, unless you put some kind of articulation on it. And then once you learn that stuff, then you can make it sound real. So now you're wondering, man, when you're listening to a soundtrack, is that real? Is that programmed? Well, here's how to tell. Anything that John Williams does is a real orchestra. Anything that the real big band, the Family Guy big band, I just love the theme to Family Guy. I love it. I have on my desktop a PDF of the sheet music because I'm trying to figure it out on guitar. You know what I mean? It doesn't translate to guitar very easily. I'm working on it. But I think that stuff is amazing. And there was a section in my life where I was into Rush and Iron Maiden, but also jazz fusion, Return to Forever. I listen to Return to Forever now, and I hear a bunch of shredders on cocaine that aren't playing the same song. But each individual musician, Chick Corea, I had his albums. Jean-Luc Ponty, the violinist, I had a plethora of his albums. Al Di Meola, I bought a Ovation balladeer because that's the style of Ovation Al Di Meola played. And I was very influenced by that too. And then when I was in college, I got turned on to Pat Metheny, and that changed my jazz world right there. Is Pat Metheny. That's the style that I'm most influenced by. I'm not going to say I sound like Pat Metheny at all, but he's inspired by Wes Montgomery. So I watch Pat Metheny and Wes Montgomery videos probably more than any other jazz video. Miles Davis is something I got into, and I'm going to credit J.P. Soares with getting me into Django Reinhardt, which is from the 40s. Not a whole lot of video, but there's some. You look it up. He just shreds. He plays with 2 fingers when he solos, but he can play with all 4 when he does the chords. That guy invented all the jazz chords on guitar, literally. Took the shit to the next level. And I wasn't able to get into the jazz stuff I'm doing now until JP showed me Django Reinhardt. He's like, dude, can I show you these weird chords? If you can learn these chords, I want to solo over it. I'm like, that sounds like fun. So JP actually, I He's one of my guitar teachers. He showed me all these strange chords that I had. Just every time I learned a new chord, I'm like, what the hell is that? And I'll have like an epiphany. Every new chord was an epiphany from what I had learned in school to what I was trying to learn, listening to Pat Metheny, and it like tied everything together. Now I know I've got about 1,000 more chords to learn on jazz guitar before I can call myself jazz. But I know some shit. And I can talk shit with jazz people, so I can hang.
I wanted to ask you because, with Pat Metheny, I know that Jaco Pastorius No More Bass had played on Bright Size Life, and Jaco being from Fort Lauderdale. Did you have any run-ins with him back then? Did you know of him back in that time period?
I did. I did, but it was already too late. He used to hang out in Pompano at what was it called? Something rock bar. It was a pool hall and rock bar. And my youngest uncle, I wasn't old enough, but my youngest uncle would hang out there to play pool. And he said he would see Jaco come in, and he would always be drunk and always get thrown out. So that's the closest tie I have to Jaco Pastorius is my youngest uncle, who also has recently passed away, or years ago. He said he met him, and I have talked to people that said they've seen him play live, but I never got to see Jaco play with Weather Report. Weather Report's another band I got into, right. But Jaco wasn't in the band anymore when I saw Weather Report, and and by the time, and he had passed away before I got to see him. But that's funny. That another like little close tie. It's like 2 degrees from everything except except the house on the beach.
It really is, though. I mean, you could find that connection if you just think about it. You can likely find that connection. I don't think it takes many steps sometimes. So
Non-Point. That's another band I wanted to talk about a little bit.
Okay.
They are the band I hear more than any other. Well, Tom Petty's from Florida. I guess there's a lot of metal bands from Florida. But when it comes to like mainstream rock, Non-Point's on 2 stations. They're on Octane and Turbo. And man, I recorded Non-Point. Non-Point Factor was their demo tape before they even turned to Non-Point, and I recorded Non-Point Separate Yourself. So 3 in the records. Then Jason Beeler from Saigon Kick. That's another thing. I have a connection to Saigon Kick because of the bass player Tom DeFile used to be in Stentorian. But anyway, I kind of helped Saigon Kick when they first started. That was lots of fun. But all right, I digress. Sorry about that. Jason Beeler from Saigon Kick got his own label and signed Non-Point, and I'm like, I get so excited every time I hear a Non-Point on the radio. Like, dude, I know those guys. Well, I know Elias and I know Rob, the drummer, and I forgot the names of the other guys in the band. But I'm sure if I run into it again, that would be a cool reunion. So, like, guys, if you're out there, I still got the same phone number. Give me a call.
Well, Rob was the founder, right? When they were Non-Point Factor.
I believe Rob was the original member of Non-Point Factor when I recorded them. Man, you know your details. That's pretty cool.
I remember seeing them. I don't think I saw them. They were Non-Point Factor. I didn't know of them, but when they became Non-Point, and they were playing a lot of the local clubs in Fort Lauderdale. I remember seeing them, and they would open up for a lot of touring bands as well. We did shows with them on local basis, local clubs, and then after Sinful Lust was done, Non-Point kind of got into getting gigs with like when Zeta or 94.9 would do a festival, they'd throw Non-Point in, and they made friends. The band Crease made friends with Zeta and got the same thing. And what was Crease called before? Before they were called Crease, they were called something else, and they played weekends. XSF.
Right. XSF. Yes. Right. So much fun. The greatest guys. They were just the cool guys. They were one of the rock bands that came in to have fun and not, and not be anal about things. So I was really happy to see those guys do it. But Nonpoint made it through this entire time. They stuck together, and they are now regularly played on Octane and Turbo and hold on, maybe I get Octane and Lithium. And for the short time that Marilyn Manson was being under investigation for the alleged rape things, which all got dismissed, thank God. I know him. He's a freaky dude, but I don't know him to be like someone that would like harm anyone. But he's a freaky dude. You know what you're getting into if you go out with him. Let's just say that. But anyway, while all that was going on, they weren't playing Marilyn Manson on Sirius XM, but they were playing a shit ton of Nonpoint. And I was like, wow, how interesting. As soon as the charges were dropped, Marilyn Manson's back on the radio. Interesting. They still play Nonpoint, but they're playing Marilyn Manson too. And I always get a kick, even though I'm never going to hear anything I recorded from Marilyn Manson or Nonpoint, on the radio, because those are old recordings that they've upgraded since then. I still it makes me excited to see people I worked with they're still there. They're still doing it. I know for a fact that I think Elias lives in Boca. I think he's still paying rent. I don't think anyone owns a house yet, except for Brian from Marilyn Manson. You know what I mean? So what does success really mean? It's like, well, for the guys in Poison the Well, it means doing what you love, and they gotta be just high on life right now. They've been playing all of the biggest festivals, and their logo's hard to read on those posters with all the different names, but I can always find it. And every poster, their logo gets bigger and bigger and closer to the top, and now they're headlining one of those tours. I'm just so happy for them. And that's just like, still it comes back to, they're one of my most favorite bands to record, because I get to hear them on the radio so much, and I get to hear my own recording so much, and I'll never forget it. I'll never forget those guys.
Those typically are typically are 3, maybe 4 bands from that period that you could see on some of those festivals headlining or being in the top echelon. Would be Nonpoint, Poison the Well, and Newfound Glory, because they're the 3 bands that are still active.
That reminds me, because the Newfound Glory thing that I did, it was called From the Screen to Your Stereo.
Right.
All right. And I remember having to sign a release form as the producer, making it official. I was the producer of that recording, and the release form said that there was no, something about they weren't stealing anyone's music. I'm like, but it's an album of cover songs. They're doing movie soundtrack punk style. How am I supposed to sign this and say that it's whatever? To get paid, I had to sign it. All right, so I signed it, and now I'm thinking, did that ever go gold? I might need a gold record on my wall if From the Screen to Your Stereo ever went gold. And it's one of those things. I have this list of things to do if I ever get an intern. I'm like, here's some fun stuff to look up. look up the single for Get Your Gun. Let's see how many that sold. And look up From the Screen to Your Stereo, because those are the 2 things that I was a part of that were actually on major labels that might have gone over 500,000. Just might have.
It's very possible. I'll have to do some
It's
research.
quite possible. I was shocked when I heard that Opposite of December had sold 90,000 copies on Trustkill Records.
Right.
And that was when Terror from the Red was coming out on Atlantic. But on Atlantic Record, or Velvet Hammer, but with Atlantic Records money, man, if you're not going gold, a couple 100,000, that's great for a fucking hardcore band, but that's not good enough for Atlantic Records, unfortunately.
I bet.
Poison the Well found themselves stuck in that situation where if they're going to keep doing what they're doing, you stick to your guns or change it up. They stuck to their guns, and now they're on the radio, and now they're headlining festivals, and I'm so glad they did what they did. And I know they weren't together for a little while. I know Derek did Sleigh Bells cool as shit to see them on Saturday Night Live. I
Right. They
walked
were
down, I walked
popular.
down,
They were pretty popular and big in their own right.
yeah, I walked down the stairs from taking a shower, and my kid was watching Saturday Night Live, like, hey, and tonight's guest, Sleigh Bells. I'm like, I've heard of them. Hold on a second. Is that? And I sat down and watched. I'm like, oh my god, that's Derek. Get out of here! And I like freaked out. I'm like, that someone I know is on Saturday Night Live. You know, besides seeing those guys on Headbangers Ball, I don't know what was bigger. Seeing Derek on, on Saturday Night Live. I'm like, get out of here! Yeah, and they did pretty well for a while. I'm glad he's back in Boys in the Well.
It was interesting to see that because again, it was vastly different than the.
Yeah, they had to change their logo. Their logo looked like Slayer, and it said Slay, like Slayer, Sleigh Bells, and they had to change it to not look like Slayer and actually spell the word Sleigh Bells for real. That was a shame because I saw them. I went down to Revolution, didn't have a ticket. I just stood by the tour bus, literally just stood by the door of the tour bus, and eventually Ryan Premack came out. Ryan was didn't poison the well, but he was helping out with the tour. He was like, dude, Jeremy, holy shit, it's been forever. Do you have a ticket? Do you have a ticket? No. I was like, well, come here. So he got me backstage, and I got to, hang out and meet Sleigh Bells and, hang out with Derek for a little bit. So that was kind of a cool little story. Just so I'm nobody. Let me see what can happen if I just go stand by the tour bus. And it worked. It worked. I'm like, maybe I'll see somebody I know. And sure enough.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was fun. But I was like so happy to see, Derek get to do something completely different. And it was popular, man. Their video got millions of views. It was, I remember Sleigh Bells. It was fun. It was fun to watch that happen. And then, and then, years go by and, I don't have, what do you call it, Sirius XM until I acquire my 2013 Equinox, and I just got it a few years ago, and it came with like I said, Sirius XM, and I almost wrecked the fucking car when I was driving to Okeechobee doing 90 some plus miles an hour on this little 2-lane road, Beeline Highway, going out to the city of Okeechobee to work, do IT work, and on the corridor covers Shai Hulud, Linoleum. And I went, what? That, of all the things I've recorded, that would be the last thing on this planet I would ever expect to hear on the radio. And it was after that, that I saw Poison the Well and went, no way. How long has this stuff been going on? And I've been missing out not having Sirius XM, and I could have been listening to bands that I've recorded this whole time. I'm kicking myself. Right. But so happy. And then, I just kept hearing, more Poison the Well. I'm like, dude, they're playing a different song. They're playing a different song. They're playing a different song. And then out of nowhere, Remembering Never, like right in between, Faith No More and Metallica, they played Remembering Never. I'm like, how did I even know about this stuff? It turns out, South Florida, I guess, has a name for itself. And a lot of people know that some cool bands came from not just Florida, not just Tampa, but I guess also South Florida too. So that's, it's just really cool that I was lucky enough. And I'm gonna say that over and over again. I was lucky enough to be in the right place at the right time to work with these people. You know what I mean? It could have been anyone. I'm sure they liked my work, which is why they kept working with me, but there's a big portion of it is luck. I was in the right place at the right time, just doing what people wanted to do. And trying to do what other live engineers would do to piss off the band, I would do the opposite. Whatever, as a drummer, made me mad, I would do the opposite. And I think bands appreciated that. They saw that I spent extra time putting the drums on the mics on the drums in just the right angle. Like, wow, most people just throw them up there. I'm like, that's not what I would do, if it was my drum kit. Using a flashlight on the guitar amp to see through the mesh, to see where the cone is. You don't want to put the mic right dead center of the cone. You want the mic off to the side of the cone. Gets the best guitar sound. Most guitar players are like, dude, you're actually going to the trouble to, like, wow. It's like a lot of sound men just throw a mic there. I'm like, that's what you would do if you're, in a hurry. I'm, OCD, ADD, I'm on the spectrum. I'm like, yeah, this is the way I like to do it. And I think that made people happy. Marilyn Manson, for instance, they found out that I brought my sound system in a big U-Haul. They started hiring me to take them to the gig. I would meet them at their warehouse at like 2 PM, get paid extra money to help them load up all their I wouldn't even load up. I would just sit there and watch. They'd load up all their props, all their gear. I'd take them to the gig in my U-Haul. They felt 10 times more pro than showing up in their cars with their gear. We unloaded, had the ramp, and then we would do sound check early, and the club would hate it. But they had management. John Tovar was their manager, and he'd make someone come in early, open the club early so we could sound check. And that was the start of, dude, we're ruffling feathers. I love this.
Did you have any John Tovar stories you wanted to share?
Except for the time when I first met him and I was catching a buzz because I was doing shots, and he like tapped me on the shoulder. Are you Jeremy? Like, yeah. I can't really do his Cuban accent too well. Marilyn Manson wants you to be his soundman. And I'm looking at, they're on stage already, and this is my sound system, but there's someone already running sound for them. Like, no, he's fired after tonight. Okay, I'm in. This sounds cool. That's my most memorable John Tovar experience. But through John Tovar, I got to run sound for, like 10 other bands I can't remember the names of. And some of the gigs were pretty cool. Strangest, we got to play, you know how the cruise goes out into the ocean so people could gamble? I did one of those cruises with a band that needed, I had to run sound for them, and it was like one of those all night thing. I got paid extra money to be out late. It's cool stuff. So working with John Tovar, nothing bad. I've heard some people have some negative things to say, but I didn't deal with them. You know what I mean? He would come out while Marilyn Manson was on stage, make the vocals louder. That's all. He would just constantly tell me, make the vocals louder. I'd be like, yeah, okay.
A lot of people don't know this, but this was a couple months, maybe 2-3 months before he sadly passed away.
Right.
I was very close to getting him on the podcast to tell his story. We had quite a few conversations over the phone, and it was one of those moments where I said to myself, wow, I wish I would have been recording this, because he was basically doing the episode without us really doing the episode, because we had a little challenge with lining up a day and a time. I think he was going through a lot of health issues.
We
came really close, but
cool.
I am grateful for the time that I did get a chance to chat with him, because it was he was a really big Beatles and Stones fan, and
that's interesting. I didn't know that. Yeah. That's very interesting. I'll tell you what, he really looked out after Marilyn Manson, and he was the type of person. He was a big dude. So when he made demands at the club, the demands were met, and it was just, I appreciated that from him. And I wasn't intimidated by him at all, but I could see how people could be. I knew him as a nice guy. It's like, Jeremy, can you make his vocals louder? Like, doing my best, before feedback, you know what I mean? That's it. So, but yeah, I thought he was a pretty cool guy, and one of those, just big figures that could be intimidating, but I knew him not to be intimidating. You know what I mean? And it's cool guy. Yeah. He was very, very, very protective of his acts. And Bougelard. Let me see. Well, yeah. And Bougelard was a Tovar act.
Did you know Nuclear Valdez?
I did not know them, no, nor did I know the what was the country sounding
Mavericks?
Band? The Mavericks. I didn't know the Mavericks either, but man, they were good. I saw them play once, blown away. They were really good. Yeah, I can see why
they're another band from down south that became
Tovar's partner was their manager. The Mavericks, yeah. Right. I don't know if Tovar managed the Mavericks himself. I think it was his partner. They had a company, I think, and it was his partner that was their manager.
Yeah.
But yeah, cool stuff. To say that, I was there. I was there for this. I was there for that. I got to see some cool things. I got to hang out with some cool people, and I know I got a bunch more stories, but I'm running out of ideas.
Sure. And
Ask me a question.
just kind of coming full circle. I know you
Yeah.
mentioned your two sons. Not everyone's father has lived the kind of life that you have lived. So, what are their thoughts on their dad and just what some of the things that you've done musically and the career that you've had? I know you're still going, but you've done so much.
It's interesting. I've done a lot, and I think my older kid who would drive with me during the IT work, he would see me just so elated whenever anything came on the radio that I did, that he appreciates that. He knows that I've done cool stuff. He he also knows that that I'm very happy that I did a band called Hell Witch that's on Listenable Records, that JP's doing well. But what really gets me is my 19-year-old. He would come down to the studio. I'd let him play the drums. He and his mother and I would hang out in the control room, talk or watch TV, and all of a sudden I hear a drum pattern. I would guess what song he was playing. He'd be listening to Spotify or whatever, and I'm listening to a drum part. I'm like, that's fucking Poison the Well. What the fuck? So I waited for the song to finish. I'm like, Justin, did you just play Nerdy? He's like, yeah, I love Poison the Well. That's it. Done. I've lived my life. I can die now. I can die a happy man. I can die a happy man. And so he's the one that's pushing me to go see them in Orlando. He's like, Dad, we have to go see Poison the Well in Orlando. I'm like, yes, we do. Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do. Yeah, still that band, the stories from them really, I'm so happy. I'm so proud of them. You know what I mean? It's like the same thing with Newfound Glory's getting ready to do like some kind of big reunion tour. I see on Instagram, and they still got a shit ton of followers too. So yeah, I'd go see them if they came down here. I'd hang out with those guys too. I messaged them on Instagram. They got back to me, so like they still know I'm alive. It's pretty cool. This new technology where people don't live around here anymore, but yet I can just send out a little message. Hey man, it's been a long time. Hey, how's it going? Really cool. It's it's not as personal or as intrusive as digging up someone's phone number or sending them an email or trying to texting them something, but just reaching out on Instagram seems to be like a cool new way to talk to somebody I haven't talked to in a while. And I've been doing that. I've actually been reaching out to a lot of people that I used to record. They've all moved away, just kind of curious to know what I was doing. Not that they're going to be any clients or anything in their near future, but it's just kind of cool to see that there's some people still doing stuff.
Right.
Yeah. Even though they moved away, especially Shai Hulud. Yeah.
Right.
They're on tour still. They play some of the same festivals as Poison the Well. I can't believe they're still going. Wow.
Did you have any good Shai Hulud stories?
Okay, I got one. Matt Fox was, I don't know if he's still part of Shai Hulud, but Matt Fox was Shai Hulud. He's the one that started the band. Right. And super nice guy. But I can tell now that that I know all about psychiatry and therapy and stuff, I can tell that Matt was on the spectrum too. And so when you get two people on the spectrum battling over ideas. All right, so this was Matt and I, best friends still to this day, but he would be the person that I would yell at, all in good fun. He would do a part, then want to change it. I'm like, didn't you already write the song? This is hardcore. It's supposed to be done. Change it. I want to add something over it. I'm like, okay, so add something over it. I want to put a third part, like a harmony doubling this other part. No, a third totally different part. Like, Matt, I got attention deficit disorder. You're killing me. Who is supposed to listen to what part? We do a third part. All right, I got this fourth idea. Like, Matt, you're gonna have 4 different guitar parts going over the same thing. So we would battle over how many guitars we could fit onto tape, make it happen, and we'd have to go from like 8 guitar parts back down to 2 rhythms. And it was challenging, but I will say he pushed me to my challenges, and we got shit done, and the result is great. All right, now besides Matt Fox, that I can say. That sounds like Matt Fox annoyed you. It's like, no, he didn't really annoy me. I'm just, I can act like I'm being annoyed. I'll tell you who annoyed me. One of his singers. It wasn't Chad. It was this Geert. He came from another country, and he was a hardcore singer, had a great voice, but hardcore singers live sing with a microphone. The microphone is pressed up tight to their lips, so it sounds like that. And they'll sing like this, then they'll sing like this, then they'll sing like this, then they'll sing like this. Geert wanted me to move the microphone every line. A Neumann. Well, when I sing this part, I sing like this. But the next line, I sing like this. So you're telling me every line I got to come out of the control room and move the microphone up or down just so you can get your body position right? I'm like, Matt, get this fucking guy out of here. There was one time. No, we got through the recording, but I was like, I wasn't mad at Matt. I was mad at this kid Geert. I mean, he was really annoying the fuck out of me. I'm like, Matt, if you don't get this guy out of here, I'm literally gonna fucking punch him. And so somehow we got through the recording, but he only played on one song. he only did one song. So that's my funny Shai Hulud story. Is Matt Fox? Seemed like he annoyed me, but I really actually liked him because, dude, that cover of Linoleum is fucking killer. What a great idea! What a great idea! And I want to actually. It's one of the people I need to reach out to on Instagram is Matt. Fucking great idea. That shit's still on the radio. Just fantastic. Congratulations. I'm so happy that I was a part of it. You know what I mean? So glad to be a part of it. So yeah, that's another thing. But yeah, that was one band, Shai Hulud, that I didn't think that would ever take off because I just thought that who knows about Dune and the Sandworms? I mean, you're so niche. But I guess a lot more people knew about Dune and than I knew, and people caught on, or maybe they didn't care what Shai Hulud meant. It sounds kind of jihadist, but if you read the book Dune,
right,
Frank Herbert kind of based a lot of the war stuff off of jihad, and so it's just like one of those things. I just never thought that Shai Hulud would ever do anything, ever. And there they are on the radio, and just cool as fuck. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's so cool. So yeah, that's my Shai Hulud story. I'm elated that they have one song that they play. Like I say, every few months I hear it on the Corridor covers. It's on there on a pretty regular basis. Really, really happy about that. Really happy for those guys.
Another former guest of the podcast who brought you up during his episode was Kerry Peak.
Right. He's the one that got me in touch with you.
Yeah.
He got me in touch with you.
So I know that when he talked about when you were recording the C60s record, you had also gone to Criteria.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember memories of that situation?
That is a situation that I will never, ever be able to forget. And let me tell you why. All right. First, when you're walking into Criteria, they have several different studios. The A room is the room that's the biggest room, and to get to the control room, to get to the A room area, you have to walk down this hallway that's just covered with gold records. Platinum records. You're seeing Eric Clapton, Bee Gees, was Wasting Away at Margaritaville. He just passed away recently. Oh my goodness, Jimmy Buffett. All right, so you're seeing all these records, all these gold records. You walk into the A room. It's a huge room made out of wood. They got a grand piano. The room sounds beautiful. You go into the control room, and they have this huge old Neve from the 70s. And this is where the story gets good. As the engineer of the band, I'm allowed to sit the main chair and the main desk. I'm in between the monitors. I'm just looking at this Neve console going, wow, this is pretty cool. All the gears behind you, like in a big studio. The assistant engineer that's assigned to the room to help me hook anything up that I need to hook up is going through a list of the bands that have recorded in the A room through this console. And this list is long, and it's starting to get all right. And then he says, Eagles, Hotel California. And I fucking froze. And I'm just sitting there looking at the fader. Eagles. Hotel California. That was one of my dad's favorite records. I grew up listening to that record. I know that record backwards and forwards. That was done here? I didn't see the record. I didn't see the gold record on the wall. There's just too many of them. I didn't hear anything the guy said after that. The list just went on and on. He just kept rambling for another half hour of all the bands that recorded. I'm just sitting here going, I'm touching the mixing board that did Hotel California. That's what I'm thinking about. I was internally freaking out without making any sound, going, I don't even know what to say. And so we recorded for one day in there, got all the music done, started recording vocals, and then they move us into Studio B, which has just a vocal booth and an SSL. And the SSL is the board that you mix through. And everyone right off the bat noticed, man, it doesn't sound as like thick and as warm as the A room with that Neve console. And so one of the stories while we were actually tracking, now I'm listening to the engineer. He's saying, yeah, there's a rumor that that after they recorded on this board, they didn't want to move to a smaller studio. They wanted to mix on this board, no automation. And this is in the day, mid 70s, automation was new, and moving faders, all that stuff. This Neve had no automation. And so they were going to mix Hotel California without any automation. But my guess is this room was so far in the back that it was the control room. If you're going to do cocaine, that's the room that you want to be in right there. And this is that time. And if you listen to what Hotel California is about, especially the song Hotel California, you can tell they were experimenting with drugs at the time. And there's a rumor, and this rumor cannot be confirmed, but the rumor is that they took the Neve mixing board, all the outboard gear, and they put it on a boat to go out into international waters to record half the album so they could do all the drugs they wanted. Then they came back, put all the gear back into a control room, and then mixed the record there. That's the rumor. I don't know if it's true or not. Can't be confirmed. But that's the story. I will never forget that story from Criteria ever. But C60's recording went great. Their music was really catchy. Kerry knocked it out of the park. Everyone knocked it out of the park. We were making rough mixes, the cassettes. The band loved the rough mixes that we had going on. And then the label owner came down, and he sat in with the assistant engineer, and they remixed the album, and then the band didn't like it anymore. And we were just sitting in the lobby, in the waiting room, waiting for them to come back out with their revisions. And, basically we didn't really hear the final product until it came out. And the band was like, dude, the demo tapes that we had from when you were, the roughs were so much better that, we ended up with a product recorded at Criteria that we weren't proud of. Sad. So much time, so much money. The mixing board that did Hotel California. And we didn't get the product we wanted.
Right. That's disappointing to hear.
Oh man. And I really felt bad for the guys in the band, because they know that we all did our best, and that if we had control of it, it would have sounded like we wanted it to sound like. You know what I mean? And it's like sometimes the guy that's got the money, has a different vision.
Sure.
And that's rough. That's a really rough part of the music business. And that's where I see bands break up. The funk broke up. They were really popular up here in Boca, really popular. They played down in Fort Lauderdale all the time, always packed the house. Someone from Hollywood Records, someone famous, I can't remember the guy's name, the guy was famous, came down from Hollywood Records, met with the band, and said, hey, you guys are great, you guys got some good songs, but we need you to work with a producer that's going to help you, write your songs and make them more radio ready. Half the band was like, fuck yeah, this is the moment we've been waiting for. The other half of the band was like, fuck no, they're not touching our music. And the band broke up over it. They were successful. They were doing well. They were getting paid all over the place. someone comes and gives them an option and then they break up. Why did they have to even talk to that guy? It's like,
Sure.
fuck. You know what I mean? It's like, fuck.
I've heard similar stories from other guests where those kind of situations happened right as they were about to get signed. They were right on the cusp. Even at times, money was being already exchanged, and then
Uh-huh.
something like that transpires, and then done.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a shame. In the early days of what I did, every time a local band would break up, I was happy. That meant 4 new bands to record. That's literally how I was booked for a year for a long time. And it's quite possible that someone from Poison the Well was in another band that I recorded before Poison the Well. It's quite possible how I even met them.
Right.
There was so much of that going on back
There
then.
was there was a lot of incestuous
Yeah,
sharing
yeah,
of different band
uh-huh,
members, and
yeah,
a lot of people would cross different types of genres of
yep,
music and what have you. So I imagine there could have been people who may have recorded with you with one band, then came in a few months later
yes,
or a year later with a totally
yep.
different band.
Yeah, and that actually happened. Like I said recently, with Dave from Bury the Broken, came back, several years later in a band called the Sea Monsters that turned into Sweet Blood. You know what I mean? It's crazy. Yeah, people end up doing different things because their lives change. The only thing that doesn't change is change itself. That's one of the oldest sayings, and I see it true. So when I do get to see something that hasn't changed too much, I kind of get a kick out of it. So when people see me with my hair down, they're like, "Oh my God, you look like you did, back then." I'm like, "No, I'm like way older, but I still have the long hair."
Right. You do.
but
You've had the long hair going back to what, since the 90s?
yeah. I'm gonna say here's the deal. I came back from BYU, which was a Mormon college, and I knew that I wasn't going back because I knew that whole scene was just not for me. Even though my dad was a bishop, I was going to find it hard to tell him that I didn't book any classes and wasn't going back. But I didn't have to worry about that too much because unfortunately my dad became addicted to cocaine while I was in college and was in rehab when I got back from college, and looked like the church was going to excommunicate him because he was in rehab and was a bishop. And this might sound horrible, but the first question I asked my mother on the way home from the airport while she's telling me this is, does that mean that I don't have to cut my hair and we don't have to go to church on Sunday? Because that would make me really happy, because I was already starting to grow my hair long at BYU, which was a sin. I went out there with a fresh haircut and they wouldn't give me my student ID until I got my haircut shorter. I'm like, are you kidding me? So out of spite, I let my hair grow long for the few months I was there, and I was definitely looked at by everyone on campus like, well, what is this guy doing growing his hair? It's almost down to his shoulders. Well, unheard of at a Mormon school. It's just unheard of, and I was so glad to be the one. So I started growing my hair at the age of 18 and haven't
Wow.
stopped.
Yeah. That's a long time.
Now I'm 58. Yeah, for 40 years I've had long hair.
Yeah. Wow. Did your mother did she ever know like what you did in your life and your career musically?
I talk to my mom all the time.
What are
In
her
fact,
thoughts? What are her
in
thoughts
fact,
on what you've done?
the song that I sent you, it's called "Song for Mom." It's actually called "Sunshiny Day" (parentheses Song for Mom), specifically written for her. I came up with that idea years ago, but like I said, was kind of waiting on the ability to actually record something jazzy and have it sound good. And part of it was my guitar tone. I would play the guitar part, and it sounded like Jerry Garcia. Nothing against the Grateful Dead, but that's not the sound I was going for. You know what I mean? So it kind of took me years to develop my actual jazz guitar sound. But my mother was so supportive. My father was so supportive. I was allowed to play the drums up until 9 o'clock at night. My dad went to bed at 9 because he woke up at 5 because he owned a roofing company. And so he had to get up at 5 in the morning. In fact, I worked with him over the summers. That's how I learned the discipline of waking up early in the morning and going to bed early. So, but my dad was so supportive of the fact that even though we were listening to Iron Maiden, and he just thought that was the worst band in the world. Yeah, just like he loved the fact that I played played the drums, and I got him to go with me to a Rush concert, which was, that's not his style of music at all. But after showing him, Rush on MTV, the Exit Stage Left, actually, it was the Exit Stage Left concert that we actually went to, Moving Pictures, where we got there at the Hollywood Sportatorium, and there was a riot, tear gas, and we actually had to leave without seeing the show. But my dad realized how big of a deal it was, and he actually got into the band Rush because of that experience. He realized, wow, these guys are really good musicians, and the drummer writes some very profound lyrics. You know what I mean? The word Rush sounds like it has to do with drugs. You know what I mean? So, my dad was a rocker, but at the same time, he was a Mormon bishop. So he had, he was open-minded but closed-minded, open-minded but closed-minded, and very supportive of the fact that when I graduated high school, it was expected that you were supposed to go on a mission and knock door to door, knock on doors, and spread the word of the Mormon religion. My dad said, that's probably not what you want to do, right? I'm like, yeah, I don't really want to do it. It's like, well, being down the bishop, you at least have to go to BYU. I'm like, I can do that. I'll go to BYU. So that was my compromise with the church thing. And cocaine got me out of it. The 80s. And the funny thing is I know the people that got my dad into cocaine, and they're a successful car dealership family now.
Okay.
I won't mention any names, but sure. I know how it happened. I got too many memories from all the way back there. But yeah. My parents were very supportive. My mom is very creative. My mom helped design the Sinful Lust logo.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she came across the font, and then my buddy Adam Dearborn, the guitar player for Sinful Lust, very successful graphics. He does company logos, marketing, your image. If you have a brand new company, you need an image. He does your image, the graphics for your website, your logo, this, that, and the other. Super talented. And he was going to FAU the whole time that we were doing Sinful Lust. And this is how we knew that we couldn't continue Sinful Lust, because my brother was had a drywall gig. I had a bunch of sound gigs in a studio. Adam was in school doing art and was going to go to college, was like working his way up the art thing. And Russ had a day job where he was, doing programming. And so our next step was to tour. We can't tour. Well, what are we going to do? Well, let's go out with a bang. Our last show, Rafe Tape and Ambougallard, just like we started. Packed the fucking house, had a fucking blast, and we called it. And we called it. And literally, I almost felt like, all right, here's the chance for Ambougallard to take the scene over again. Non-point swept in and fucking swept up all of our fans. And I watched them grow after we went away. You know what I mean? We were doing shows. Non-point would open up for us. We would open up for non-point. We were kind of like, equals on the scene.
Right.
We went away. Ambougallard kind of broke up because Jordy joined Marilyn Manson, and non-point was right there to sweep up all of the metal, the metal fans right there. There was another band, Scars of Life. Scars of Life had the #1 download on mp3.com for 6 months. A song that I recorded. Talk about a fluke domino effect. It was a catchy song, but you know how like someone says, hey, this is popular, check it out. And the domino effect. But for 6 months, they had the #1 download on mp3.com, which I don't even know exists anymore. And then they ended up getting signed to UFC started a label because they wanted music in front of their, and they were using non-point. They're not non-point. They were using Scars of Life music, and so they signed a deal with them, and they actually recorded a record at some big studio, and then Scars of Life didn't hear anything from the UFC label until the record was done, and it was so horrible that they sued to get off of it.
Wow.
So Scars of Life had their 15 minutes of fame with a recording I did, and then they were going to get bigger with UFC, and they nixed that deal because they mixed it without them being there, without any input from the band. And you can't do that with a local
Yeah.
band. In fact, I don't know if you've noticed on all of the CDs that have my name on it. This is what I try. This is what I always asked the band to do. I would ask the band to put produced by the name of your band and Jeremy Staska. Don't put me first. Put you first because it's your music. I'm not writing your music for you. The number one thing is your music. You're coming to me for a recording. I'm producing the recording. But if it wasn't for you and your music, so I would always make the bands put produced by them and Jeremy Staska. And so I hope that someone maybe notices that someday and realizes
I know
that's why everything sounds different. That's why everything sounds different. I wanted the band to be a part of the recording,
right?
Because you don't get to be when you are on a major label. You think you got all this budget and it's going to come out exactly the way you want it, and it's a lie. It's a lie. That comes out the way they want it to come out. The people spending the money, they're the ones in charge of deciding how it comes out. And when you're a local band and you're working with a local producer, it comes out the way you want it to come out.
Exactly. No, I think that's something that I know I've noticed on a lot of the records that bear your name. It would typically say the band and yourself. And I know even if you may have recorded one song by a band, I feel like if we went through every single band or musician that you've recorded, I feel like everything would have a story in some way, shape, or form. And there's just so many that you've done, as you know. But is there anyone else that comes to mind that perhaps we haven't touched on yet that you feel does have a memorable story or may have left its mark on you, perhaps more than maybe some others?
I think I might have covered them all. I'm probably sure I'll think of something after this interview is over. But you heard me get all emotional when I was talking about Poison the Well. That stuff right there, that's why I wanted to mention that, because that was some of the most moving things that happened, while in this, business, being, one of the people way down, on the ladder as far as what you call success, but still, feeling that I know that I'm a part of an influence. I know that I helped every band get what they wanted that influenced someone else. That I know. There's a common denominator. I might not have been a necessary common denominator, but I was a common denominator in a lot of things, and that makes me feel good, even though I'm, not, like I said, I don't own a house on the beach yet. So, even though
yet,
I'm going to use the word yet. I'm going to keep on using that word till I die. But I can definitely say like, I can die happy knowing that I've helped a lot of people get what they were looking for, or as close to it as possible. And there's just like it's the totality of everything that kind of like hits me. So sometimes people got to remind me of specific things, you know what I mean? But I kind of mentioned like all the things that really touched me the most. And that was, working with Marilyn Manson was cool. Working with Poison the Well was cool. Never expected them to be as big as they were. Didn't, almost kind of thought that Brian from Marilyn Manson would do something because he had that drive. I'm going to be a rock star no matter what. I didn't hear those words out of his mouth ever, but I saw it in him. And so that's something that kind of sticks with you when you see someone with determination and they set out to do something and they're not going to stop until they do it. That affects you, whether you adopt that principle or not. You see that quality. It's like, it's a strength, determination. in this business. That's a strength, and that's something that I will always admire Brian for. You know, it's a shame that he didn't get along with some of the band members as much at the end. But you know, when I first knew him, he didn't do drugs at all, not at all. And fame and fortune will make you do shit that you didn't do before. I had a chance to work with Trent Reznor as being one of Trent Reznor's engineers. I can only imagine that my name was dropped from Brian. Like, that's the only way I can think that the connection was made. A talent scout reached out to me and said, "Hey, you know, we got a one-way ticket for you to New Orleans to work for Trent Reznor. The stipulations are, you know, he wants you there for a while. That's why it's a one-way ticket. Hopefully you don't have like a serious girlfriend or a kid." I had just got my girlfriend pregnant. So I was still thinking of it. I actually told Melissa, like, "Hey, listen, I got this opportunity. I might, you know, work with Trent Reznor for a while." She's like, "You know what? I would never think of standing in, you know, in the way of your dreams. You know, you have my full support." Morally, I just couldn't do it. Morally, I couldn't leave her. But I had a punk band in the studio, and I was telling the story to the punk band. And one of the guys said, "Oh, my dad lives in New Orleans, and he's Trent Reznor's drug counselor." And then I went, "You know what? There's that line. Remember our line that we talked about? Certain lines that I don't cross?"
Yep.
And then I remembered a story that the guitar player for Marilyn Manson, Scott Putesky, like I said, I don't want to talk shit about anyone, but I remember a story he told me when he quit the band. And I decided not to go to New Orleans. And it probably has to do with drugs. Probably would be the type of thing that I'm okay with authority. If I have a boss that's smart and tells me what to do, I can learn from a boss. But I work for myself a lot. A boss that is not as intelligent as I am and does things wrong, I've got a very short temper with bosses like that. And I had this feeling that if I went to New Orleans, I would have ended up punching Trent Reznor in the face because he was on drugs, trying to tell me to do something in Pro Tools that wasn't possible. You know what I mean? I had this vision of, drug use, me being sober, and me snapping. And I didn't want that to happen.
Right.
I didn't want that to happen. Never met Trent Reznor. I've seen him live. Fun fact is I saw Nine Inch Nails live when Marilyn Manson opened up, and I didn't know Marilyn Manson opened up. And it was just a couple weeks later that they broke our record at Weekends for 900 people. And it was that show that got them super popular, opening up for Nine Inch Nails on Nine Inch Nails' first tour. Yeah, crazy connection. So I definitely admire Nine Inch Nails, Trent Reznor, all that stuff. But when that kid said, "Oh yeah, my dad's his drug counselor," that just made me think, I'm going to leave my girlfriend who's getting ready to I'm going to miss the birth of my son to go hang out with drug addicts that might make some good music, might not, you know what I mean? I didn't know. And so I might have turned down one of the biggest opportunities in my life, but I wouldn't change my decision for the world. I'm glad I stayed. You know what I mean? I got to work with, if I had never come back, I would have never worked with JP Soares, who is like I say, he's my most successful artist. He is on the radio more than anyone around the world. And I'm going to shoot him your information. You might want to check him out. You had Pooch on, and JP is just as successful, if not more so, doing blues stuff. He makes a living completely off of blues. He owns a condo. All right. So besides Brian from Marilyn Manson, JP Soares is the only other person I know who owns a home from being in the music business. And there's a lot of people I know.
Oh, I bet.
So yeah, I'm working on it. I know it's possible because I'm watching it happen. And I'm going to make it happen too. But yeah, so maybe the next time we interview, I'll be like, yeah, I put a down payment on a house on the beach.
There you go. There you go. Yeah. I just think it's really an amazing story to hear. the journey that you've had, Jeremy, from the earliest beginnings to where things are in the current state. And as I mentioned when we first started, as I was going through just looking at some of my own collection and just
Hmm.
seeing your name appear on so many records of all kinds of different types of music, whether it was on vinyl, CD, cassette, whatever it was, it really is amazing. And I know, speaking
I'm
for
thankful.
myself, and I'm sure many of the people's lives that you've touched will appreciate this episode and hearing your story. And I just want to thank you again so much for all the time that you've taken. And I absolutely do want to give you the last word. I know you've shared so much, but is there anything that you want to close out with? Any final thoughts you wanted to share to fans of yours, supporters over the years, anyone else you would like to kind of share some words with? I will turn it over to you to take us home and close us
All
out.
right. All right. Yes. As a matter of fact, we did talk about a lot of the bands that I worked with. There are so many more that we haven't mentioned. So many more I can't even remember the names of. Feel free to email me at jeremy@studio13.com and say, hey, I was one of the bands that recorded. I will get you on my website. If you have a graphic of your recording, so many people recorded and never put anything out. If you can just email me, I'll put you on a list. And another thing is I am so grateful for, like I said, being in the right place at the right time and being able to work with incredible people that you don't know how incredible they are until you actually talk to them, work with them, and see what they do later on. And persistence is something. The music business is not for everyone. And if you're smart enough, you're probably doing something else. But there are some of those that just don't have anything else to do, and persistence is something. But I want to address that. Persistence requires faith. Faith is something that is very important to humanity. Humans aren't humans without having faith. And if we didn't have faith in the things that we do, then we couldn't do things. But unfortunately, faith is one of the most exploitable traits of humans. And I just want to remind everyone that's listening, keep your mind open to everything, to any ideas. Everyone's opinion might seem like just like another asshole or elbow, but the entire world comes together somehow with with bringing us all together, and faith. There's different types of faith, but we need to have faith in each other if we're really going to make life happen. And I've discovered that the true happiness doesn't come from having a house on the beach like I've been joking about. It really comes from when you help people, and you help people with either using your own faith, that you have faith you can help someone, or when you do help someone and it helps their faith grow stronger, whether or not you believe the same thing or not. So I just want to remind people, keep your mind open with all the crazy stories that are going on out there right now, the conspiracy theories, religion, and politics. It's like the subjects I don't really like to talk about, but we could get into. Just remember, man, music is a universal language that brings everyone together, no matter what, no matter where you're from, no matter who you are, no matter what you believe. And I think Steven Spielberg had something right in Close Encounters. I think it might be the music of like aliens. Aliens might be listening to our music and might be getting off on it. Who knows? You know what I mean? So don't stop making music, no matter what kind of music it is, whether it's the most brutal stuff, the most boring stuff, whatever. Just keep on making music. Keep on doing more styles of music, because I think that's what's part of what humanity is, besides, our wonderful traits of faith, trust, this, that, and the other. The ability to create and to create music is something that a lot of people wish they could do. And not many people actually follow through with it. There's a small percentage of people that actually follow through. If you're considering doing something in music, have the faith that you can do what you want to do, It just takes persistence, and might take a lot longer than you expect. That's all. And with that said, I'm going to keep on trying, even though I've been trying a long, long time. And people say you're already successful. Like, I agree, but where do you go from here? You just got to keep on going. You got to try to be more successful. I'm going to try to find another band that's bigger than the last band. And that would be my final words: is all young bands, all young artists, all older artists that think you're too old. You're not. If you have the faith and the persistence, you can make something happen. And I'm here to help.